Hey guys, it's Nemo the editor again. Just want to say thanks for choosing to listen to Wide Awake Horror today. Today we've got some first date horror stories for you guys. So if you're new here, you know the drill. Subscribe, smash that like button for more videos like this, and let's get into it.
I did not think a random Friday could turn into the worst memory I ever keep replaying in my head, but it did. And it started with me standing in a weirdly quiet food court pretending not to check my phone every 10 seconds. I remember thinking how the place felt half closed, like it was holding its breath. The lights were too bright, the floor sticky in that way malls always are, and the smell of old fries mixed with cleaning spray was everywhere. I was waiting for her, my first real date in months, and I kept telling myself to calm down because nothing bad ever happens in places like this. People say that all the time. They are wrong. We met online, nothing fancy, just messages that went on too long at night when I should have been asleep. She seemed normal, funny in a dry way, a little awkward like me. When she walked up, I noticed she looked more tired than her photos, like she had not slept enough, but I brushed it off. Everyone looks different in real life. I did that thing where I stood up too fast and almost knocked my drink over, and she laughed, and it felt okay for a second. Just okay. Not sparks, not fireworks, just two people trying not to be weird. We decided to walk instead of sitting. The mall was connected to this outdoor strip with cheap restaurants and a small movie theater that no one ever goes to. It was late, but not that late, the sky already dark, the air cold enough to make my hands ache. She talked a lot at first, then suddenly went quiet. I figured she was nervous. I was too. I kept thinking about how this was supposed to be simple, just a date, just a walk, nothing dramatic. About 20 minutes in, something felt off. I could not explain it without sounding paranoid, but there were way too many police cars parked at the far end of the strip. Lights flashing, but no sirens. People standing around in small groups, whispering. The movie theater doors were locked even though the sign said it was open. I thought maybe there had been a fight where someone stole something. Still normal stuff. Still stuff that happens. She noticed it too. I could tell because her shoulders went stiff and her steps slowed. Her face changed in a way that made my stomach drop, like she had just read something terrible on her phone. She kept glancing behind us, then at me, then down at the ground. I asked if she was okay, and she nodded too fast. I remember thinking that nod meant no. We sat on a bench near a closed yogurt place. The metal was freezing through my jeans. That was when she leaned closer, way closer than before, and her voice dropped even though she did not actually speak loud or quiet, just intense. She was shaking, not in an obvious way, but like her whole body was buzzing. She grabbed my arm, fingers digging in, and started explaining something in a rush without really explaining it. There had been an incident nearby, something bad, something with a man who looked like me, something about the police talking to everyone who had been in the area. Her eyes were wide and wet, and she kept saying she needed me to help her. She begged me, without using those exact words, to act like we had been together all night. Not just on this date, but before. She needed an alibi. She needed someone to say she was not alone earlier. She needed someone normal, someone boring, someone who looked harmless. Me. She kept repeating that it was important, that it was the only way that I could not ask questions right now. My brain froze. I remember thinking this had to be some kind of joke or test or weird story she was telling herself. But then I saw two officers walking toward us, stopping people, asking questions, writing things down. One of them pointed in our direction. My mouth went dry. I had done nothing wrong. I kept telling myself that. Still, my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was punching my ribs from the inside. I did not know what to do. I did not want to get involved in something serious on a first date. I also did not want to leave her alone when she looked like she was about to fall apart. So I nodded. That is it, I nodded. That small movement felt heavier than anything I had ever done. When the police reached us, time felt weird, like it stretched and snapped back. They asked where we had been, how long we had known each other, what time we got there. She leaned into me, head almost on my shoulder, acting exhausted like we had been out forever. I followed her lead. I said we had been together all evening, just hanging out, nothing special. I said we grabbed food, walked around, talked. All true except the part where it was only the last hour. They looked at us for a long time. One officer wrote something down. The other studied my face like he was trying to match it to a picture in his head. I could feel sweat running down my back even though it was cold. Finally, they thanked us and moved on. Just like that. No cuffs. No shouting. They walked away like we were furniture. As soon as they were gone, she pulled away from me like she had touched something hot. She stood up and started pacing, hands in her hair, breathing fast. I stayed sitting because my legs felt weak. I asked her what that was about, and she told me part of it. Not all. She said earlier that night she had been in a different part of town, someplace she should not have been, with someone she did not trust. She said something bad happened nearby, something violent, and she ran. She said she thought she saw the person who did it, and she thought he saw her too. When she saw the police here, she panicked and needed cover. The way she talked about it made my skin crawl. She was not dramatic. She was scared in a quiet, real way. I asked why she chose me, why not someone else. She said I looked safe. That hurt more than I expected. Safe sounded like weak, like useful. We decided to leave, not together. She said it would look better if we split up after being seen together. She hugged me quick, barely touching, then walked off toward the parking lot without looking back. I watched until she disappeared between cars. I told myself that was the end of it. It was not. 2 nights later, there was a knock at my apartment door. Not loud, not aggressive, just firm. I live alone, so that knock felt 10 times louder. When I opened it, 2 officers stood there, different ones this time. They asked if they could come in. I said yes because saying no felt worse. They asked me to go over that night again, every detail. What time I met her, where we went, what she wore, what she said. They asked if I knew her last name. I did not. They asked if I knew where she lived. I did not. They asked if she seemed nervous. I said yes. I told the truth. I told them she had been scared. I told them I did not know why. They told me there had been an assault nearby that night. Not against her, against someone else. Someone who was still in the hospital. They said a witness described a man who looked like me leaving the area. They said my story helped rule me out. They said her story did not line up the same way. I asked where she was. They did not answer that. After they left, I sat on my couch staring at the blank TV screen. I kept thinking about how easy it had been to lie, how natural it felt in the moment. I kept thinking about her face, the way she grabbed my arm, the way she needed me. I checked my phone. No messages. Her profile was gone. A week later, I read a short article online about an arrest made in connection with the incident. No names, no photos, just facts. I recognized the location. I recognized the timeline. I wondered if it was her, or the person she was afraid of, or someone else entirely. I wondered if my small lie had helped the wrong person or saved the right one. I still go to that strip sometimes. The yogurt place is open again. The bench is still cold. Every time I see police lights, my chest tightens. I think about first dates and how you never really know who you are sitting next to. I think about how close I came to something much worse, just by saying yes with a nod. The first thing that stuck with me was how normal everything looked, and that almost made it worse. It was one of those evenings that feels unfinished, like the day forgot to wrap itself up properly. The sky was flat gray even though it was late, and the street lights had just turned on, flickering like they were tired. I remember standing outside his place with my phone in my hand, checking the address for the 3rd time, thinking how boring the building looked. Brick, 3 floors, no character at all. That should have been comforting, but it wasn't. I had this weird pressure in my chest, like I was about to forget something important. We met online, same way everyone does now. Nothing dramatic. He seemed a little awkward but harmless. Kind of intense about random stuff, like chairs and lighting and posture and photos. But I figured that was just him being particular. Our messages were long, late, and mostly about nothing. Music. Dumb stories from school. What snacks were overrated. When he asked if I wanted to come over for a first date, I hesitated, then convinced myself I was overthinking it. I told a friend where I was going. I charged my phone. I did all the things you do to feel smart. His apartment smelled like dust and cleaner, like he had tried too hard to make it smell like nothing. It was quiet in a way that felt padded. The walls were bare except for a few framed prints that were all hung at the same height, perfectly straight. The furniture was arranged with a stiff precision that made it feel less like a place someone lived and more like a layout in a store. He offered me a drink, and I took water because my mouth was already dry. We sat down, or at least I tried to. That was when the chair thing happened. There were 2 chairs in the room plus a couch. I naturally went for the couch because that is what people do. He stopped me with a quick movement, not touching me, just stepping in the way. He guided me toward one specific chair near the window, explaining in his overly calm way that it was the safest angle. He said it like it was a fact, not an opinion. Like he was telling me where the bathroom was. I laughed at first because it sounded ridiculous. I thought he was joking. Then I realized he wasn't smiling. He gestured again to the chair, more firmly this time. I sat down because I did not want to make it awkward, and because part of me still thought I was misunderstanding him. The chair was wooden hard, with a straight back that forced me to sit upright. It faced the room in a way that made me feel on display. He took the other chair, angled slightly, closer to the wall. He started explaining the layout. Not like someone showing them out their place, but like someone giving instructions. From that chair, I could see the door, the window, the kitchen entry. He said it mattered to know what was behind you. He said blind spots were dangerous. I nodded, pretending to listen, while my thoughts started racing. I told myself this was just his thing. Everyone has a thing. As the night went on, the chair became impossible to ignore. Every time I shifted, the wood creaked loudly. Every time I tried to relax, my back protested. He barely moved at all. He sat with his feet flat on the floor, hands on his knees, posture perfect. His eyes kept drifting past me to the window, then back to my face, like he was checking alignment. I asked if we could switch seats. I said it casually, like it was no big deal. His whole body stiffened. He explained again, slower this time, that my chair was positioned at the safest angle. He said his chair was not meant for someone else. He said switching would defeat the point. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. It was not angry, it was final. I laughed again, weaker this time, and said I was uncomfortable. He did not respond the way people normally do when they hear that word. He did not apologize. He did not adjust. He leaned forward slightly and started talking about safety in general. About how people get hurt because they ignore small details. About how most accidents are preventable if you plan correctly. The whole time, his eyes stayed on me, unblinking. I became very aware of my body, the way my legs felt stiff, the way my hands kept clenching in my lap, the way the room seemed smaller than it had when I walked in. I noticed there were no throw blankets, no pillows, nothing soft within reach. Even the rug was thin and rough. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second dragging. I tried again to move, just a little, like I was adjusting my position. He noticed instantly. He told me to sit back properly. He said slouching reduced visibility. That was when the fear really settled in, heavy and cold. Not panic yet. Just this deep sense that I had stepped into something with rules I did not understand. I started paying attention to details I had ignored before. The way the window locks were reinforced. The way the door had an extra latch. The way there were small marks on the floor near the legs of my chair, like it had been dragged to that exact spot many times. I wondered how many people had sat where I was sitting. I wondered if they had asked to move too. My phone buzzed in my pocket and the sound felt too loud. I reached for it without thinking. His head snapped toward my hand. He asked what I was doing, not curious, just alert. I said I was checking the time. He told me I could do that later. He told me staying present was important. I put the phone back slowly, my heart pounding so hard I thought he'd hear it. I told him I needed to use the bathroom. He hesitated, then pointed down the hall, giving me very specific instructions about which light to turn on and which door not to open. I stood up, and for a second I thought he was going to stop me. He did not, but his eyes followed me the entire time, and I felt exposed even with my back to him. In the bathroom, I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized my own face. I thought about leaving, just walking out. I thought about how close the door was. I thought about the chair waiting for me in the other room. My phone buzzed again. A message from my friend asking if everything was okay. I typed yes. I do not know why. Maybe I did not want to admit I was scared. When I came back, he was standing next to the chair, adjusting it slightly, lining it up with those marks on the floor. He gestured for me to sit again. I did. My legs felt numb. The rest of the night blurred together in this tense fog. He talked. I listened. He kept circling back to safety, to angles, to control. Every time I tried to steer the conversation somewhere normal, it slid back into that same narrow track. Eventually, I said I had to go. I expected resistance. I expected an argument. Instead, he nodded like he'd have been waiting for that moment. He walked me to the door, standing just close enough that I could feel the heat from him. He unlocked the latches one by one, slow and deliberate. When the door opened, the hallway light felt blinding. I left without looking back. I walked fast, then faster until I was outside, gulping cold air like I had been under water. I did not run. I did not scream. I just kept moving until my hands stopped shaking. Later that night, safe in my own room, I read through our old messages, looking for signs I missed. I noticed how often he mentioned control, how often he talked about positioning and planning. It had all been there. I just did not see it yet. Sometimes I still think about that chair, about how something so simple could feel so threatening, about how he knew exactly where he wanted me to sit and exactly how little space he left for me to choose anything else. I used to think first dates were only scary in a dramatic way, like awkward silences or spilling something on yourself. But this one crept up on me slow, like it wanted me comfortable before it showed its teeth. It started with the sound of typing. Not loud typing, not aggressive, just constant. This soft tapping that never really stopped. I noticed it before I noticed her smile, before I noticed her jacket, before I even noticed how tired I felt from rushing there after work. That tapping followed me the entire night, and even now I still hear it sometimes when everything is quiet. We met at a coffee place that stayed open too late and smelled like burnt beans and sugar. It was one of those places with mismatched chairs and scratched tables where people pretended to study. I got there early and picked a table near the back, mostly because I like watching people come in. When she walked through the door, she spotted me instantly, like she'd memorized my face. She waved once, then sat down across from me, phone already in her hand. Right away, she explained she liked to take notes. Not in a nervous way, not embarrassed. Just matter of fact. She said it like she was telling me her favorite color. I laughed it off because people do weird stuff on dates now, and I did not want to be judgmental. She set her phone flat on the table, screen up, thumbs ready. Every time I talked, she typed. Every time. If I paused to think, she waited. If I joked, she typed faster. It was subtle enough at first that I tried to ignore it. I told her about my job, about how I live in a small place near the freeway, about how I waste too much time watching videos I will never remember. Tap, tap, tap. I mentioned my family. Tap, tap. I talked about school, dropping out, about how I sometimes regret it. Tap, tap, tap. I asked her about herself, and she answered, but shorter than me. She did not type when she talked, only when I did. That should have bothered me more than it did. Instead, I told myself she was just organized, maybe anxious. Maybe this was her way of coping. The longer it went on, the more aware I became of my words. I started choosing them carefully, like I was taking a test I did not know the subject of. When I stumbled over a sentence, her thumbs paused, then resumed like she was deciding how to record it. That made my chest feel tight. I laughed less. I talked slower. The tapping never stopped. After coffee, we walked. The street was busy, loud with cars and people, but I could still hear the typing. She held her phone at her side, screen dimmed, typing without even looking sometimes. That freaked me out a little, how automatic it was. I asked if she ever worried about missing the moment. She smiled and said moments could be reviewed later. Then she typed that too. We ended up in a small park nearby, the kind squeezed between buildings with one broken fountain and flickering lights. We sat on opposite ends of a bench. I tried to relax. I tried to pretend this was normal. She asked questions, specific ones, about how I reacted to stress, how I handled criticism, how often I changed my mind. After each answer, the typing. Sometimes she nodded like she was confirming something she already knew. I noticed her phone screen was when she tilted it by accident. It was a notes app, but not like any notes I had ever read. There were numbers next to short phrases. I did not get a good look, but it stuck in my head. I wondered if the numbers were times or rankings or something else. I told myself not to ask. I did not want to seem insecure. When I finally said I was tired and needed to head home, she agreed easily. Too easily, like the date ending was just another box checked. We hugged, quick and stiff, and she walked off toward a bus stop without looking back. I stood there longer than I should have, listening to the city noise, feeling oddly drained. I thought that was it. Just a weird date, something to laugh about later. I even told a friend the basics, leaving out how unsettled I felt, because I did not want to sound dramatic. 2 days later, I got a notification from a shared drive app I did not remember signing up for. It said a file had been added with my first name and last initial. My heart started racing. I clicked it before I could talk myself out of it. It was a document. Long, detailed, dated. It was about me. It broke the date down into sections: appearance, communication, emotional stability. There were numbers next to everything, like scores, comments written in this flat, clinical tone. Things I had said were summarized, stripped of context. Jokes marked as deflection. Pauses marked as uncertainty. My laugh was mentioned more than once. My posture, my eye contact, even the way I held my cup. At the bottom was a total score. I stared at the screen until my eyes hurt. Part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room. Part of me wanted to keep reading, like maybe understanding it would make it less disturbing. There were references to previous entries, other names, dates going back months, maybe longer. I did not sleep much that night. The next day, I noticed I had a missed call from an unknown number. No voicemail. I told myself it was a coincidence. Everything felt like a coincidence then. Later that week, I ran into her again by accident. Or at least I think it was an accident. I was at a grocery store near my place, grabbing something quick. I heard the typing before I saw her. Same soft tapping. I turned, and there she was, a few aisles over, phone in hand. She saw me. She smiled. She typed. I avoided her. Checked out fast. Walked home with my heart pounding like I was being followed, even though I was not. That night, I could not sleep, so I went for a walk. My building has this narrow hallway near the stairwell where sound carries weird. I was halfway down when I heard her voice. Quiet, controlled, familiar. It took me a second to realize it was coming from behind a door on the first floor. I slowed without meaning to. I stood there, holding my breath, listening. She was leading a voicemail. Not rushed, not emotional. She was reading numbers and short descriptions. My numbers. My descriptions. She mentioned my name. She mentioned the total score. She talked about potential, about risk, about whether I was worth further contact. It sounded like a report, like she was updating someone who had asked for this information. I backed away slowly, every muscle tense. I went back up to my apartment and locked the door, then sat on the floor until my breathing calmed down. I kept thinking about the other names in that document, about how many people had been scored, about who she was reporting to. The next morning, the shared document was gone. The app showed no record of it ever existing. Her profile was gone too. Messages deleted, like she had never been there at all. I still think about that total score sometimes, even though I do not know what it meant. I think about how carefully she listened, how nothing I said was just a sentence, how everything turned into data. Now, whenever I hear typing nearby, I tense up without meaning to. It is hard not to wonder who is recording you and why. The moment that sticks with me did not feel dramatic at first. It felt small, almost boring, like the kind of thing you would forget by the next morning. I was halfway out of my chair, bag already on my shoulder, body leaning forward in that automatic way you do when your brain has decided it is time to go. I remember thinking about my bed and how my feet hurt. I remember feeling relieved. Then the server paused, looked past me, and nodded, and that relief slid right out of my chest, like it had never been there. The date itself had been fine. Not good, not terrible. Just fine in that flat, drained way. We met at a bar that pretended to be a restaurant, all dim lights and loud music and menus that were too big. It was one of those places where the tables were too close together and you could hear other people chewing. I got there early and picked a seat near the aisle so I would not feel trapped. That should have been my first clue that I was already planning an exit. He was late, but not apologetic late, just casual about it. He acted like time was flexible if you wanted it to be. We ordered drinks, then food, then more drinks. He talked a lot about himself, jumping from topic to topic, never staying on one thing long enough to mean anything. I nodded, smiled when I was supposed to, checked my phone just enough to feel grounded. When the bill came, I did not hesitate. I asked to split it, paid my part, and watched the server walk away with my card. That part mattered to me. I always pay. It makes leading easier. It makes things clean. When my card came back, I signed, stood up, and said I had an early morning. My body was already moving toward freedom. That was when he waved the server back. I did not catch everything at first. I was distracted by the scrape of my chair and the sudden weight of my bag. I only noticed something was wrong when the server glanced at me again, and set another drink on the table, right in front of my empty seat. My name was on the receipt. I knew because the server said it without really thinking, just repeating what he had been told. I froze, half standing, half sitting. He laughed it off with his hands, acting like this was nothing. He explained that it was still my tab, that we were not done yet, that it would be rude to leave now. I tried to correct it. I tried to say there was a mistake. The server hesitated, looked between us, then nodded and walked away. I sat back down slowly, my heart starting to beat harder. I told myself this was a misunderstanding, a dumb one. I would clear it up, finish the drink, then go. Except when the glass was half empty, he ordered food, under my name. The server did not even look confused this time. It was like a switch had flipped. My name had become the anchor, the reason that everything stayed attached to the table. Every time I shifted in my seat, every time I checked my phone, another item appeared. Fries, another drink. A dessert menu placed directly in front of me, even though I had not touched the last thing. I told him I really had to go. My voice felt thin. He smiled and said there was no rush. He said we were having a good time. He said I should relax. I noticed how his foot had hooked around the leg of my chair, subtle enough that no one else would see it. Not enough to trap me. Just enough to remind me he was there. I flagged the server again. I explained calmly that I had already paid, that I needed my tab closed. The server looked uncomfortable. She glanced at him. He nodded at her, still smiling, and said it was all together. He said I had agreed earlier. She apologized to me without really apologizing and walked away. That was when the fear started to settle in. Not panic. Not yet. Just this heavy awareness that I was not in control of something very basic. I could feel my pulse in my ears. The music felt louder. The room felt warmer. I thought about just leaving anyway, about walking out and dealing with the charge later. But every time I shifted forward, he ordered something else. It was like a game, like he was daring me. The receipts piled up near my plate, each one with my name printed neatly at the top. Seeing it over and over made my skin crawl. It felt like being signed into something I did not remember agreeing to. I tried to catch the eye of someone nearby. A couple at the next table. A group by the bar. No one noticed. Or maybe they noticed and did not care. The place was loud, busy, full of people minding their own business. Time stretched. My phone battery dipped lower. I sent a quick message to a friend saying I was stuck and might need help. I did not explain. I did not have the words. He noticed me typing and asked who I was talking to. I said no one. He ordered another round. At some point, I stood up fully, pushing my chair back hard enough that it made noise. Heads turned. The server rushed over, eyes wide. I said I was leaving and needed my tab closed now. My voice was shaking, but it was loud enough to cut through the music. The server nodded quickly, relief flickering across her face. Then he leaned back and ordered one more thing. Something expensive. Under my name. The server froze. I watched her face change as she processed it. She looked at me. I shook my head. I told her I did not authorize it. I said it clearly. People were watching now. The air felt electric. She said she needed to get her manager. While she was gone, he stayed calm, too calm. He told me this could all be easy if I just sat down. He said I was making a scene. He said he thought I was different. His hand rested on the edge of the table, fingers spread, blocking the receipts. I could see my name peeking out from underneath. The manager came over. I explained everything again, slowly, carefully. I pointed to my receipt. I pointed to the new charges. I said I wanted to leave. The manager listened, jaw tight, eyes flicking to him and back to me. He finally dropped the smile. Just for a second. Long enough for me to see something hard underneath. Then he laughed and said it was all a misunderstanding. He said he would cover it. He said I could go. The manager nodded, said something about comping items and keeping things calm. I did not wait for details. I grabbed my bag and walked away, legs trembling so badly I thought I might fall. I did not look back. Outside, the night air hit me like a wall. I stood on the sidewalk shaking, breathing too fast, trying to feel real again. My phone buzzed. A notification from my bank. A pending charge. More than I expected. More than I could afford. A number followed by dollars that made my stomach drop. I disputed it later. It took weeks. Forms. Calls. Retelling the story over and over until it felt fake even to me. Eventually, the charge was removed. Just like that. Like it had never happened. But I still think about how easily my name was used to keep me there. How something as simple as a tab became a leash. Sometimes when I am at a restaurant and the server asks for a name, my throat tightens. I watch the receipt like it might change when I am not looking. It started with a heavy feeling you get when you realize too late that you picked the wrong place to meet someone. The plaza was packed in that messy early evening way, kids running through fountains that barely worked, street performers fighting for space, food smells colliding in the air. I remember thinking it was too loud for a first date, too public in a way that felt fake safe. Still, I told myself that public meant fine. Public meant nothing could really go wrong. That thought did not age well. We met near a long concrete planter where people sat pretending it was a bench. She showed up right on time, hair still damp like she had rushed. She smiled, quick and bright, and I felt that normal first date relief. The kind where you think maybe this will just be a story that ends with a shrug. We grabbed drinks from a stand nearby and wandered, talking about nothing important. Her laugh was loud. Not fake loud, just big. People turned when she laughed. I noticed that. Everything felt normal for the first half hour. Not great, not bad, just normal. We sat near the edge of the plaza where a group of older guys played chess on battered boards. She watched them closely, then watched the people watching them. I thought she was just observant. I liked that about her at first. She noticed details. Who stood where? Who paid attention to what? I thought it was interesting. She asked me questions that felt oddly specific. Not deep, just precise. How I reacted under pressure. Whether I got embarrassed easily. If I cared what strangers thought of me. I answered honestly because I did not see a reason not to. I joked a little. She nodded a lot. Her eyes kept drifting to the people around us instead of staying on me. Then it happened, and it happened fast. 1 second, she was sitting beside me, legs crossed, sipping her drink. The next, she stood up abruptly, knocking her cup over so liquid splashed across the concrete. Her face changed completely. Not scared, not angry, sharp, focused. She raised her voice and accused me of crossing a line. Not quietly, not privately. Loudly enough that it cut through the noise of the plaza like a dropped plate. I did not even understand what she was saying at first. My brain lagged behind the moment. Then I realized people were looking at me. Not at her, at me, faces turning. Bodies angling closer. The chess players paused their game. A woman with a stroller stopped dead. My heart slammed so hard it felt like it was trying to escape. I stayed seated, hands visible, because I suddenly became aware of everything my body was doing. I had not done anything, I knew that, but knowing it did not help the way it should have. She kept going, adding details that made no sense. Exaggerations, twists, things that had not happened. Her voice cracked in all the right places. She looked upset in a way that felt practiced. and through all of it, her eyes kept flicking away from me and into the crowd. She was watching them, measuring something. I stood up slowly because sitting felt wrong, but standing felt worse. I could feel the heave of tension on my skin. Someone muttered something under their breath. Another person pulled out a phone. I wanted to explain. I wanted to defend myself, but my mouth would not cooperate. Every word I thought of sounded like it would make things worse. She took a step back from me like she needed space. The crowd tightened. Not aggressively, just enough to remind me I was surrounded. I noticed how many people were suddenly very interested. How many were ready to decide something about me without knowing anything at all. Security from a nearby building approached, not running, just alert. She shifted immediately when she saw them, turning her body so they could see her face clearly. She repeated the accusation slower this time, making sure it carried. She looked to the side again, watching reactions, watching who nodded, who frowned, who leaned in. I tried to speak. I tried to say nothing like that had happened. My voice came out thin and shaky, drowned by the noise of the plaza and the weight of suspicion. One of the guards raised a hand, not aggressively, just enough to signal pause. That small gesture made my stomach drop. They separated us by a few steps, asked questions. Her answers were smooth. Mine stumbled. I was aware of how guilty I must have looked just by being overwhelmed. I was aware of how every movement was being judged. I could feel sweat gathering at the base of my neck. After a few minutes that felt like hours, things de-escalated. There were no sirens, no cuffs, just a warning tone, just eyes lingering on me longer than they should have. The guards moved on, but the crowd did not fully disperse. People kept glancing my way, whispering, recalibrating their evening around what they thought they had seen. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time that night, she smiled. Not wide, not friendly, just satisfied. She picked up her bag and walked away into the crowd without another glance, melting back into the noise like nothing had happened. I stood there alone, heart racing, trying to breathe normally. My hands were shaking. I realized I had dropped my drink somewhere near my feet. I did not pick it up. I just wanted to be invisible. I left the plaza as quickly as I could without running. Every person I passed felt like a threat. Every laugh sounded aimed at me. When I finally reached the quieter street beyond the lights, I leaned against a wall and tried to ground myself. I replayed the date in my head, searching for the moment I had missed, the thing I had done wrong. There was nothing. Just normal conversation. Just space. Just a stranger deciding something about me. Later that night, I checked social media, half expecting to see a blurry video of myself captioned with lies. Nothing showed up. No posts. No tags. It was like it had never happened. That almost made it worse. The idea that it could exist only in memory, in the minds of the people who saw it and then went home. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I searched her name. Not much came up. But buried deep in an old forum thread, I found something that made my stomach twist. A post from someone describing a similar situation. Different place. Same pattern. Public accusation. Quick exit. No follow-up. The comments were split between outrage and doubt. The post ended without resolution. I read more. Found another and another. Always vague. Always public. Always disappearing before things went too far. I started to see the shape of it. She was not after justice or attention. She was testing something. Watching how fast a crowd could turn. Watching who believed what with no proof at all. I still think about the way she watched the crowd more than she watched me. About how I was never really the point. I was just the subject of a test I did not agree to take. Now, whenever I am in a busy place, I am aware of how thin everything is. How quickly a normal moment can tilt. How little control you have once a story starts moving without you. I avoid plazas. I avoid crowds. Not because I am scared of people, but because I know how fast they can decide who you are. I knew something was wrong before my phone ever left my pocket, and that is the part that still messes with me the most. It was that feeling you get when someone finishes your thought out loud, except I had not even thought it yet. My hand was still wrapped around my bag strap, My phone pressed flat against my thigh, screen dark. I was just about to check it, just about to end the night, when he casually mentioned which rideshare was pulling up and complained that it was late again. Again, like this had happened before, like he had been waiting on it. The night had already felt stretched thin, like it had gone on longer than it should have. We met at a small arcade bar that smelled like old carpet and syrupy drinks. Lights flashing, machines chiming, everyone half shouting over each other. It felt safe in a messy way. Noisy places always do. We played a few games, laughed at dumb stuff, talked about random things that did not matter. Nothing deep, nothing alarming. I remember thinking it was fine. Not exciting, not awful. Just fine. He was observant in a way I first found flattering. He noticed when my drink was low before I did. He remembered small details from messages. He pointed out things around us, patterns on the walls, reflections in the glass. It felt like he was paying attention, like he was present. I did not question it. Why would I? After a while, I felt tired. The light started to hurt my eyes. I told him I was going to head out. He nodded, easy, no pushback. We walked outside together into the cooler air. The street was busy but not crowded, cars passing, people drifting between bars. I stepped a little away from him, creating that polite end-of-date space. That was when it happened. Before I even reached for my phone, he mentioned the car, the color, the model, the name on the app. He rolled his eyes like he was annoyed and said it was running late again, like this was an ongoing problem. My brain stalled. I remember staring at him, waiting for the punchline that never came. I pulled my phone out slowly, heart starting to pound. The app was already open. I had ordered the ride earlier without telling him, figuring it would be there by the time we wrapped up. The details on my screen matched exactly what he had just described. Every single one. I laughed because I did not know what else to do. My laugh sounded wrong to my own ears. He smiled back, not confused, not surprised. Just satisfied, like he had been right about something. He asked if it was the same one as last time, and that word last hung in the air between us, heavy and wrong. I asked how he knew. He shrugged, said it was obvious, said he was good at patterns, said he noticed things. He gestured vaguely at my pocket, at the street, at nothing specific. The explanation did not explain anything. My stomach twisted. The car still had a few minutes before arrival. We stood there in silence that felt louder than the bar had been. Every few seconds, he glanced down the street, then back at me, like he was tracking something I could not see. I felt exposed, like my phone screen was somehow visible even though it was angled away. When I shifted my weight, he shifted too. When I stepped back, he stepped forward just enough to close the gap. Not touching, not blocking. Just there, my skin prickled. The app updated. The car was closer now. I had not said anything about it, but he commented on that too, mentioning the updated time like he was watching the same screen. My chest tightened. I locked my phone without thinking, holding it tight in my hand like that might fix something. I started scanning the street, looking for the car, looking for people, looking for anything familiar. Everything suddenly felt strange. Every passing vehicle made my heart jump. Every shadow felt like it was leaning in. He started talking about rideshares in general, about how predictable they were if you knew where to look, about how people thought they were private when they were actually full of patterns. His tone was casual, almost bored, like he was explaining a hobby. I nodded, but my mind was racing, trying to figure out what he meant, how much he knew, how long he had known it. I asked if he used the same app. He said sometimes. He said he liked knowing how things moved around the city. He said it was interesting to watch. The way he said watch made my throat go dry. The car turned the corner at the end of the block. He pointed it out before I saw it myself. My heart dropped into my stomach. The headlights swept across us, and for a second, everything felt too bright, too exposed. I took a step toward the curb. He did not move to stop me. Instead, he leaned in slightly and mentioned the license plate, just enough for me to hear. It matched. I felt dizzy. The car slowed, pulling up right where he said it would. The driver glanced at me, then at his phone. I opened the door quickly, my hands shaking. Before I got in, he mentioned that I should check the back seat next time because some drivers did not clean properly. The way he said next time made my stomach flip. I got in and closed the door harder than I meant to. The lock sound felt like relief and fear at the same time. As the car pulled away, I looked out the window. He was still standing there, watching, phone in his hand now. The screen glowed against his face. He did not wave. I stared straight ahead for the rest of the ride, heart racing, replaying everything in my head. I checked my app again and again, like it might suddenly explain itself. It did not. Nothing looked wrong. Nothing looked hacked. Everything looked normal, which somehow made it worse. When I got home, I lived alone, and the quiet of my place felt wrong. I locked the door and then checked it again. I sat on my bed with my phone in my hands, scrolling through settings, permissions, anything that might tell me how he knew. There was nothing obvious. No shared links. No connected accounts. Nothing. I went back through our messages. I read them slowly, line by line, looking for hints. There were questions that felt different now. Small ones about timing, about routes, about when I usually left places. At the time, they felt like conversation. Now they felt like data collection. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a notification from the app, asking me to rate the ride. My heart jumped so hard it hurt. I did not rate it. I closed the app and turned my phone face down on the bed. I did not sleep much that night. Every car sound outside made me tense. Every notification made my pulse spike. I kept thinking about the word again, about how assured he sounded, about how comfortable he was knowing something he should not have known. The next morning, I blocked him, deleted the app, downloaded it again, checked everything twice. Nothing else happened. No messages, no calls, no signs, just silence. But sometimes when I am waiting for a ride now, I get that same tight feeling in my chest. I keep my phone close. I do not check it until the last second. And when a car turns the corner, I watch it carefully, wondering who else might already know it is coming. The first thing I remember is the sound of my own voice coming back at me from her phone, and how wrong it felt even before I understood why. It was slightly delayed, just enough to feel like an echo that did not belong to the room. I had not noticed when she started recording. I only noticed when she stopped, saved it, and labeled it carefully like it mattered more than the conversation that came before it. We met at a small art space that doubled as a cafe, one of those places that tried too hard to be calm. White walls, concrete floors, chairs that were uncomfortable on purpose. It was quiet enough that every cough and chair scrape sounded huge. I picked it because it felt public but low pressure. I figured if things got weird, I could leave easily. I was wrong about the second part. She arrived early and already had a table. That should have been normal, but something about how still she sat made me uneasy. Her phone was face up on the table, screen dark, placed neatly beside her cup. She smiled when she saw me, warm and quick, and stood to hug me. Nothing strange there. I relaxed a little. We talked about normal stuff at first. Work, how the city had changed. Random complaints about rent. She listened closely, nodding, eyes focused in a way that made me feel like she was really paying attention. I liked that. I talked more than I usually do. I filled the quiet. Then she asked me to repeat something I had just said. I thought she had not heard me. The room was quiet, but maybe someone dropped a cup. I repeated the sentence, no problem. She tilted her head and asked me to say it again, slower. I laughed, a little embarrassed, and did it. That was when she reached for her phone. She explained she liked collecting voices. Not in a creepy way, she said, but in a practical way. She said tone mattered. She said people said more with how they spoke than what they said. She asked if she could record me saying a few things. It sounded harmless enough. I hesitated, then agreed. I told myself it was just a quirk. Everyone has one. She held the phone between us, microphone pointed at me. She asked me to repeat simple sentences, casual ones, things that could fit into any conversation. I did not think much of it at first. I repeated them. She listened, then asked me to try again, adjusting my tone slightly. Less upbeat, more neutral, softer, firmer. Every time she saved the recording, labeling it with a short note. The process felt weirdly formal, like an audition I had not prepared for. I joked about it, but she did not laugh. She was focused, intent. Her fingers moved quickly, confidently, like this was something she did often. I started to feel self-conscious. I became aware of my accent, my pacing, the way my voice tipped at the end of sentences. She corrected me gently, telling me when I sounded unsure, when I sounded defensive, when I sounded too friendly. Each correction came with another recording, another save. I asked what she was going to do with them. She said they were for reference. She said consistency mattered. She did not explain further. We ordered food, but it went cold on the table. She barely touched hers. Every few minutes, she asked me to repeat something else. Sometimes it was something I had just said naturally. Sometimes it was something she suggested. All harmless on the surface, all normal phrases. She corrected my tone each time, guiding me toward a specific sound. Calm, steady, agreeable. I started to feel like I was shrinking, like the version of me speaking was getting narrower and narrower. I wanted to stop, but I did not know how without making it awkward. The space felt too quiet, too exposed. I was aware of other people nearby, working on laptops, pretending not to listen. I wondered how strange this must have looked from the outside. At some point, I noticed the file list on her phone had more entries than we had recorded that night. Dozens, maybe more. Names and dates that were not mine. My stomach tightened. I realized I was not the first. She caught me looking and turned the phone slightly away, but not before I saw a folder labeled with a word that made my skin crawl. Training. I asked her what that meant. She paused, considering, then said it was easier to explain later. She asked me to repeat another sentence. This one about trust. I did it, my voice shaking just a little. She stopped me and asked me to try again, correcting my tone like she had done before. Calmer, smoother, like I meant it more. That was when I realized she was not just recording my voice. She was shaping it. I felt this wave of panic rise in my chest. Not sharp, slow and heavy. I told her I needed to go. She frowned slightly, like that was not part of the plan. She said we were almost done. She said she just needed a few more variations. I stood up anyway. My legs felt unsteady. She did not try to stop me, but she kept talking, explaining how important it was to get things right. She said voices were powerful. She said people believed what they heard, especially if it sounded familiar. She said it was about reliability. I grabbed my jacket and backed away from the table. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. She stayed seated, phone in hand, watching me with that same focused expression. She did not look angry. She looked disappointed. I left the cafe and did not stop walking until I was several blocks away. The night air felt thick, like it was pressing in on me. I kept touching my throat, like my voice might still be sitting there trapped. When I got home, I lived alone and the silence felt wrong. I replayed the night in my head, every correction, every saved file. I wondered what she could do with those recordings. I wondered who else she had collected. I wondered why. A few days later, I got an email from an unknown address. No subject line, no message, just an audio file attached. My heart raced as I stared at it. I did not want to open it. I did anyway. It was my voice. Not exactly. It was smoother, steadier, assembled from pieces. Sentences I remembered saying, stitched together into something new. It said things I had never said. Things that sounded like me agreeing to things I had never agreed to. I closed the file and deleted the email. Then I deleted it again from the trash. My hands were shaking. Nothing else came after that. No more messages. No more files. Just silence. But sometimes when I hear my own voice on a recording now, it does not sound like it belongs to me anymore. It sounds like something that can be taken apart and put back together by someone who knows exactly how it is supposed to sound. The moment my phone disappeared, the whole night tilted like someone bumped the table my life was sitting on and everything slid at once. It was such a small thing, almost playful, and that is what made it worse. There was no warning feeling, no dramatic lead up. Just his hand moving faster than my brain, a quick laugh, and the weight of my phone gone from my palm. I remember staring at my empty hand, fingers still curved like they were holding something, and realizing how quiet my head suddenly felt. We met at a late-night diner on the edge of town, the kind with buzzing lights and vinyl booths that stick to your skin. It was almost empty when I got there, just a couple of truckers and the tired-looking server wiping the counter. I picked a booth near the window so I could see the parking lot. I always do that. It makes me feel less boxed in. He slid into the seat across from me like he belonged there already. Easy smile. Relaxed posture. Nothing about him screamed danger. He talked about random stuff, jumping between stories, making jokes that landed just enough to keep things light. I remember thinking this was fine. Not exciting, not awful, just fine. I checked my phone a few times out of habit. Nothing urgent, just grounding myself. Halfway through our food, he reached across the table suddenly. I thought he was grabbing a napkin or pointing something out. Instead, his fingers closed around my phone, and he lifted it clean off the table. Before I could react, he slipped it into his jacket pocket and leaned back, laughing like he had just pulled off a harmless prank. I laughed too at first, because that is what you do when you are confused and do not want to seem dramatic. I reached for his pocket, expecting him to hand it back. He did not. He kept talking, launching into another story like nothing had happened. Eyes locked on mine, smile a little too steady. I asked for it back, still casual. He waved it off with his hand, still talking, telling me to relax. He said people were too attached to their phones. He said it was good to disconnect. He said it was just for a minute. That minute stretched. I started to feel this tightness in my chest. The diner suddenly felt smaller. The hum of the lights felt louder. I became very aware of how few people were there, how the server had moved to the back, how the door was farther away than it looked. I reached for my bag, thinking maybe I had an old phone or something inside. I did not. My wallet felt heavy in my hands. Keys, lip balm, nothing useful. I looked at him again, re-looked this time. His smile had not changed. His eyes were watching me closely like he was waiting for something. He kept talking about his job, about a trip he wanted to take, about how people overreacted to small things. Every now and then, he tapped his jacket pocket like he was checking that my phone was still there. Each tap made my stomach drop. I tried to stand up. He leaned forward just enough that my knees bumped the table, not blocking me, just reminding me of the space. He told me to sit, still smiling, still talking like this was all normal. I sat because my legs felt weak and because I did not want to make a scene without knowing how bad this could get. My mind started racing. I thought about calling someone. I thought about pretending to go to the bathroom and asking the server for help. I thought about how stupid it felt to be stuck over something so small. It was just a phone. But it was also everything. My way out. My voice. I tried to catch the server's eye when she passed by. She did not notice. Or maybe she did and did not want to get involved. He kept talking, his voice steady, calm, filling the space so I could not think straight. I told him again that I needed my phone. My voice sounded different to me, thinner, tighter. He laughed again, louder this time, like my discomfort was part of the joke. He said I was cute when I was serious. That word made my skin crawl. Time felt weird, stretched, and sticky. I do not know how long we sat there. 10 minutes, 20, longer. Every second felt heavier than the last. My heart kept pounding, but my face felt frozen, like if I showed too much fear, it would turn into something else. Finally, I slid out of the booth anyway, pushing past the table. My legs shook, but they held. I walked toward the counter, heart in my throat, planning to tell the server everything in a rush. Before I reached her, he stood up too. He did not grab me. He did not raise his voice. He just followed, still talking, still smiling, like we were a couple deciding on pie. The server looked between us, confused. I tried to speak, but my mouth felt dry. He slipped my phone out of his pocket then, holding it up like a peace offering. He said he was just joking. He said I should loosen up. He placed the phone on the counter instead of handing it to me like it was a prize I had earned. I grabbed it instantly, fingers shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I did not say anything else. I did not explain. I did not argue. I walked out of the diner and into the parking lot, cold air hitting my face like a slap. I got into my car and locked the doors before I even started the engine. My phone buzzed with notifications I had missed. None of them mattered. I sat there for a long time, hands on the wheel, trying to slow my breathing. I watched the diner door. After a minute, he came out, scanning the lot. When he saw me, he raised a hand like he was going to wave. I drove away before he could. When I got home, I live alone, and the quiet felt wrong. I checked my phone over and over, like it might suddenly explain why he did it. There was nothing. No tracking. No weird apps. Just my normal screen staring back at me. I blocked him that night. Unmatched. Deleted everything. Still, for days after, every time my phone left my hand, even for a second, my chest tightened. Every laugh from a stranger felt too loud. Every jacket pocket made me nervous. It was not the grab that scared me the most. It was how easy it was. How casual. How he kept talking like nothing had changed while my world shrank down to that one missing object. Like he wanted to see how long it would take me to panic. Like he was measuring something. Now my phone stays in my pocket when I am out. Zipped. Buttoned. I do not leave it on tables anymore. And every time someone jokes about stealing it, even for a second, my body reacts before my brain does. The first weird thing was not the stranger. It was the way she picked the table. Tucked into a corner of a long communal space, just far enough from everyone else to feel separate, but close enough that people kept drifting past. I remember standing there with my drink, scanning the room, thinking how this place felt like a study hall pretending to be a bar. Long wooden tables, low music, people tapping laptops and whispering. It felt safe in that boring way. I had no idea how fast that feeling could flip. We met at a place that stayed open late for people who did not want to go home yet. Dim lights, chalkboard menus, everything smelling like coffee even though half the people were drinking something stronger. She waved when she saw me, already seated, already settled. Her posture was straight, hands folded around her cup, like she was waiting for something official to start. The first part of the date was normal enough. Small talk. Surface stuff. Work complaints. Dumb stories about school. She listened closely, almost too closely, like she was storing things instead of reacting to them. When I laughed, she smiled a second later. When I paused, she waited. I noticed it, but I did not think much of it. I was still relaxed, still assuming this was just another forgettable night. Then she started asking questions that felt heavier than the setting. Not in a dramatic way. Not all at once. Just small shifts. Questions about my family that went past the usual. Questions about how I handled conflict. About my worst memory. About things I regretted. She asked them calmly, casually, like it was no different from asking what music I liked. I answered because I did not want to seem guarded. Because first dates are weird, and everyone is trying to figure each other out. That was when the stranger showed up. He did not interrupt, did not ask, did not acknowledge me at all. He simply pulled out the chair next to her and sat down like that seat had been saved. No eye contact, no greeting. He placed a small notebook on the table and opened it. Then he took out a pen and started writing. I remember blinking a few times, trying to process what I was seeing. I assumed it was a friend stopping by. Maybe someone she knew from the place. I waited for an explanation. None came. She did not introduce him. She did not react to him sitting there. She just kept looking at me, nodding slightly, encouraging me to continue my answer. The stranger wrote steadily, head down, pen moving without pause. I stopped talking. The silence stretched. She tilted her head, expectant. The stranger kept writing. I glanced at him. He did not look up. He did not even pretend to be subtle. The notebook was open, angled just enough that I could see lines filling with words. Not doodles. Not random notes. Full sentences. I laughed awkwardly, expecting someone to acknowledge how strange this was. She smiled, but it was tight, controlled. She said nothing about him. Instead, she asked another question. Deeper this time, more personal. My stomach tightened. I asked who he was. She brushed it off with a vague explanation, saying he was just there, just listening, just helping her remember things. That explanation did not explain anything. The stranger shifted in his seat and kept writing. I felt this pressure settle in my chest. Not panic yet, just discomfort growing heavier by the second. I tried to steer the conversation back to something lighter. Movies, food, anything. She followed for a moment, then circled right back to me. My past, my fears, my mistakes. Each answer I gave was met with more writing. The scratch of the pen on paper became impossible to ignore. I started noticing details, how the stranger never asked questions, never reacted, how he only wrote when I spoke, how he paused when I paused, how he sometimes underlined things. People around us glanced over, then looked away. No one said anything. From the outside, it probably looked like a study group, a tutoring session, something harmless. Inside, I felt like I was being taken apart. She asked about a bad night from my past, one I do not talk about. The way she asked made it sound like she already knew, like she was checking for consistency. My throat went dry. I hesitated. The stranger's pen hovered, waiting. I gave a vague answer, something watered down, something safe. She nodded slowly, then asked for more detail. She leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table, eyes locked on mine. The stranger leaned forward too, pen ready. I realized then that this was not a conversation. It was an intake. I shifted in my chair, thinking about leaving. The exit was clear. Nothing was physically stopping me. Still, my body felt heavy, like standing up would mean something final, like it would confirm something I did not want confirmed. I asked again who the stranger was. She finally looked at him, then back at me, and said he helped her keep track of things. She said memory could be unreliable. She said it was better to have a record. The way she said record made my skin crawl. The stranger flipped to a new page. I noticed the notebook was already thick, worn at the edges, full. This was not new. I was not the first. My heart started beating faster. I became hyper aware of my words, my posture, my breathing. Every sentence felt like it was being frozen in time, written down for some purpose I did not understand. She asked where I live, not just the neighborhood, specifics, how close I was to other people, whether I lived alone. The stranger wrote faster. I stopped answering. I said I was uncomfortable. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Thin, unsure. She frowned slightly, like that response had been unexpected, like it did not fit whatever framework she was using. The stranger paused, then wrote something anyway. That was it for me. I pushed my chair back and stood up. My legs felt shaky, but they worked. I grabbed my drink, then thought better of it and left it on the table. I said I was leaving. She did not stand. She did not try to stop me. She just watched, eyes sharp, studying my reaction. The stranger finally looked up at me for the first time. His expression was blank. Assessing. Then he wrote one last line. I walked away fast, heart pounding, every nerve on edge. I expected someone to follow me. No one did. I reached the door, pushed it open, and stepped into the night air like I had been underwater. Outside, I stood there breathing hard, trying to calm down. The street was quiet. Normal. Nothing had changed. That almost made it worse. I went home and sat on my bed, replaying everything, the questions, the notes, the silence between them. I kept wondering what they were collecting. Why? For what? A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I searched her name. It took a while, but I found something. A small site, barely updated, vague language about behavioral patterns and observation. No details, no faces, just concepts, analysis, data. I did not find my name, but I found phrases that felt familiar, too familiar. I never heard from her again. No messages, no follow-ups, nothing. It was like I had completed something and been dismissed. Sometimes when I am out in public now, I notice people watching more closely than they should. Someone writing in a notebook, someone listening too carefully. It probably means nothing. Probably. But every time I sit down across from someone new, I check the empty chairs around us, just in case. The first time I realized something was wrong was not when my stomach tightened or when my hands started shaking. It was when the music dipped for half a second and the room seemed to lean toward us, like the whole bar was listening. I remember thinking that places are not supposed to feel like that. A bar is supposed to be noise and movement and chaos you can hide inside. This one suddenly felt like a closed room with no windows. We met at a neighborhood bar that tried hard to look relaxed. Mismatched stools, chalkboard drink list, dim yellow lights that made everyone look softer than they were. It was busy but not packed. the kind of place where you could still hear yourself think if you tried. I chose a seat at the bar instead of a table because it felt safer, closer to staff, closer to exits. I always do that on first dates. He showed up smiling, confident in a way that felt practiced. Not charming exactly, just comfortable, like he expected things to go his way. He ordered for himself without asking me what I wanted, then corrected himself and added something for me like it was an afterthought. I should have said something then. I did not. I told myself I was being picky. At first, the night was normal enough. Not good, not bad, just sliding along. He talked more than he listened, but not in a way that stood out. The bar was loud enough that it felt like I could fade into the background if I needed to. I sipped my drink slowly, watching the bartender out of the corner of my eye, grounding myself in the rhythm of orders and glasses. As the night went on, his focus narrowed. He leaned closer. His voice dropped, not threatening, just insistent. Every time I tried to shift away, he shifted too. Not touching me, not blocking me, just staying in my space like he'd owned it. I started to feel boxed in even though I was sitting on a stool with open space behind me. My phone was in my bag, but I kept my hand near it. I told myself I could leave any time. I just needed a clean break. Then he said something that crossed a line. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet enough that only I would hear it. My chest tightened instantly. My body reacted before my brain could catch up. I leaned back and put space between us, my heart pounding. He noticed, smiled, said nothing else about it. Just watched me like he was waiting to see what I would do next. That was when I decided to ask for help. I slid off the stool and walked to the other end of the bar, closer to the bartender. My legs felt stiff, but they moved. I leaned in slightly, keeping my voice low, explaining that I felt uncomfortable and needed assistance. I did not accuse. I did not exaggerate. I just stated it plainly, trusting that this was one of those places where staff knew what to do. The bartender hesitated. It was a small pause, maybe 2 seconds, but it felt like a door closing slowly. Her eyes flicked past me to where he was sitting. He met her gaze and nodded once, almost casually, like they shared a context I did not have. Something passed between them. I do not know what it was. Recognition, familiarity, a decision. Her expression changed. Not angry, not annoyed, blank. She straightened and turned her body slightly away from me, addressing him instead. She gestured back toward our seats, motioning for us to keep things calm. Her tone shifted into something practiced and firm, like she was managing a minor inconvenience. I stood there frozen, trying to process what had just happened. She had heard me. She had understood. And she had chosen him anyway. He stood up and walked over, placing himself beside me but angled so he blocked the bartender from my view. He did not touch me. He did not raise his voice. He smiled like this was all a misunderstanding and put his hand on the bar in front of me, casual and solid. The bartender nodded along with him, listening to whatever explanation he was giving. She did not look at me again. My heart started racing so fast it felt like it might tip me over. The bar suddenly felt smaller, louder, every sound too sharp. I became painfully aware of how alone I was in that moment, standing between them while the rest of the room went on like nothing was happening. I tried to speak again. My voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. The bartender shook her head slightly, like she was done discussing it. She gestured toward the exit, not for me, but for both of us, like we were a unit now. I realized then that asking for help had made things worse. He guided me back toward our seats, his hand hovering near my back without touching. A reminder. People glanced at us, then looked away. From the outside, it probably looked like a couple having a small disagreement. Nothing worth stepping into. We sat back down. My hands were trembling. He leaned in again, his voice low, steady. He told me everything was fine. He told me I had overreacted. He told me the bartender agreed. The way he said agreed made my stomach drop. I scanned the bar for anyone else, anyone watching, anyone who might notice the fear on my face. No one did, or if they did not care. The bartender went back to pouring drinks, her movements quick and efficient, like she had put the whole thing away in a box marked handled. I knew I needed to leave, but I just did not know how. I waited for a moment when he turned his head to look at something behind me. Just a second. I slid off the stool and walked fast toward the door, heart hammering, not looking back. I expected hands on my arm. I expected shouting. None of that happened. I pushed through the door and stepped into the cold night air, lungs burning like I had been holding my breath underwater. I walked fast, then faster. I did not stop until I was half a block away under a streetlight, shaking so badly I had to lean against a wall. My phone was in my hand now, screen glowing. Missed nothing. No alerts. The world had not noticed. I called a friend and asked them to stay on the line while I got home. My voice cracked. I did not explain everything. I did not have to. They could hear it. When I got back to my place, I live alone, and I locked the door behind me twice. I sat on the floor with my back against it, trying to slow my breathing. My hands smelled like metal from the bar rail. Over the next few days, I replayed that moment over and over. The hesitation, the look, the way the bartender sided with him without a word to me. I wondered if they knew each other, if he was a regular, if there was some unspoken rule I had broken by speaking up. I read reviews of the place later, scrolling through pages of praise and complaints. Buried deep, there were a few comments that stood out. Vague mentions of staff dismissing concerns. People saying they felt unwelcome when they tried to ask for help. Nothing specific. Nothing that would make anyone shut the place down. I did not leave a review. I did not go back. Sometimes when I am out now, I catch myself watching the staff more than my date, noticing who they side with, who they look at first. I still sit at bars instead of tables, but the comfort is gone, replaced with this quiet awareness that help is not guaranteed just because you ask. The worst part was not him. It was realizing that when I finally reached for help, the person I trusted to step in decided it was easier to stand with him. Like my fear was just another inconvenience to smooth over so that I could keep moving. I knew the night was going to stick with me the second my stomach dropped for no clear reason, like my body had noticed something my brain was still catching up to. It was one of those moments where nothing had technically gone wrong yet, but everything felt slightly off, like a photo that looks normal until you realize someone blinked. I remember sitting there, fingers wrapped around a sweating glass, thinking I should relax, thinking I was being weird. I wish I had trusted that feeling instead. We met at a rooftop spot above a closed grocery store, the kind of place that tries to feel secret even though everyone knows about it. String lights, fake plants, cheap furniture that wobbles if you lean wrong. The city noise floated up from below, muffled and distant. It felt removed from real life, which I liked at first. I figured it was neutral ground, public but not crowded. Enough people around to feel safe, not enough to feel watched. She was already there when I arrived, sitting with her legs tucked under the chair, phone face down on the table. She smiled like she was genuinely happy to see me. Not over the top, just calm. I felt myself relax a little. We ordered drinks, talked about normal stuff. School, work, random things we both hated. Nothing deep, nothing personal. It felt like a first date was supposed to feel. What I noticed early on was how closely she watched me. Not in a creepy way at first, more like she was paying attention on purpose. When I laughed, she watched my face. When I paused, she waited without filling the space. When I looked away, she followed my gaze, then looked back at me. I told myself it was interest. I liked being listened to. After a while, the conversation drifted toward childhood. Nothing serious, just surface stuff. Favorite snacks, dumb memories. I mentioned a park near where I grew up. She nodded like she knew it. That should not have meant anything. Cities reuse names. Parks are everywhere. And she brought it up. She said it casually like it was just another memory. Something that happened when I was a kid. Something specific, too specific. An event I had never posted about, never joked about, never even hinted at online. Not with friends. Not with family. Something I had buried so deep I barely let myself think about it. The moment she said it, my chest locked up. My ears rang. The noise of the city faded into this dull hum. I stared at her, trying to keep my face neutral, trying to act like she had just mentioned the weather. Inside, everything was scrambling. She watched me closely. Not my eyes, my reaction, my shoulders, my breathing. Her face stayed calm, almost curious, like she was waiting to see which way I would tip. I asked how she knew about that, but even as I felt the question, I knew it would not matter. There was no normal answer. There was no casual explanation. She did not apologize. She did not backtrack. She just let it sit there between us, heavy and real. My mind raced through every possibility. Mutual friends. Old posts I forgot about. Someone talking. But the details she mentioned were wrong for gossip and too right for guessing. The timing, the place, the feeling. It was all there. She leaned back slightly, still watching me. It felt like a test. Like she had thrown something sharp onto the table to see if I would flinch. I tried to laugh it off. My laugh sounded wrong to my own ears. Tight. Forced. She noticed. Her eyes flicked to my hands, then back to my face. The rest of the date changed after that. Not obviously, not dramatically, but the air felt thicker, heavier. Every question she asked after that felt layered. When she asked about trust, it felt pointed. When she asked about memory, it felt loaded. When she asked if I ever worried about people knowing too much, my heart started pounding. I became painfully aware of what I was saying, of how much I was revealing just by responding. I started giving shorter answers, safer ones. She noticed immediately. Her head tilted slightly, like she was adjusting her approach. At one point, she mentioned something else from my past. Smaller this time, not as buried, but still not public. Something I had only told one person years ago. My stomach dropped again. There was no denying it now. This was not a coincidence. This was not luck. I asked where she got her information. She smiled, slow and careful, and said people left more trails than they realized. She said nothing ever really stayed hidden. The way she said hidden made my skin crawl. I scanned the rooftop, suddenly aware of how isolated it felt, how the stairwell down was narrow, how my phone was still in my pocket, but suddenly felt far away. She noticed me looking around and smiled again, like she knew exactly what I was thinking. She asked how it made me feel, having someone bring that up, not in a sympathetic way, in an observational way, like she was collecting data. I shrugged, trying to seem unfazed. My body betrayed me anyway. My shoulders were tense, my jaw tight. She watched all of it. She told me she found reactions interesting. Not the events themselves, just the way people responded when they were surprised. She said it said more about someone than anything they could choose to share. She said some people shut down. Some people get angry. Some people pretend it never happened. She waited to see which one I was. I realized then that the date was not about getting to know me. Not in the normal sense. It was about seeing how I handled being exposed, how much pressure I could take before cracking, how quickly I tried to regain control. I stood up suddenly, chair scraping against the concrete louder than I meant it to. She did not flinch. She looked up at me, calm, observant. I said I needed to leave. My voice shook, but I did not care. She nodded like she expected that, like this was one of the possible outcomes she had already accounted for. She did not try to stop me. She did not apologize. She just watched as I grabbed my jacket and stepped away from the table. As I walked toward the stairs, I felt her eyes on my back. Not angry, not upset. Satisfied, like she'd gotten what she wanted. I took the stairs two at a time, heart racing, the city noise growing louder with each step down. When I reached the street, I stopped and leaned against the wall, breathing hard, trying to calm my shaking hands. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification. Nothing important. I jumped anyway. When I got home, I live alone, and the silence felt wrong. I paced my room, replaying the night over and over. The way she said it, the way she watched me, the way she never explained. I checked my social media, my old posts, my tagged photos. Nothing. No obvious leaks. No clues. I started thinking about who knew that memory, who I had ever told. The list was short, painfully short. I wondered if one of them had shared it without realizing, or if she had found it another way. The thought that someone could dig that deep without my knowing made my chest tighten. A few days later, I got a follow request from an account with no photo, no posts, just a username I did not recognize. My heart started pounding again. I did not accept it. I blocked it. Then I blocked a few more accounts that looked similar, just in case. Nothing else happened. No messages, no follow-ups. She disappeared like the night never happened. But that memory, The one she dragged into the light does not feel buried anymore. It feels exposed, like someone lifted a floorboard and forgot to put it back. Sometimes I catch myself wondering how much someone could know about me without me ever realizing. How many things I think are private that are really just waiting to be uncovered by the right person with enough time and interest. That date did not end with a confrontation or a threat. It ended with me walking away, knowing someone had reached into a part of my life I never offered, just to see what I would do. The moment I realized I was being boxed in did not come with panic or screaming alarms in my head. It came quietly, like a puzzle piece sliding into place when you were not even trying to solve it. I was already halfway through standing up, chair legs scraping softly against the floor, when he shifted his foot just enough that I had to stop. It felt accidental. It looked accidental, but something about the timing made my stomach sink. We met at a small indoor market that stayed open late, the kind with food stalls packed too close together and narrow walkways that force you to brush past strangers. It smelled like fried dough and cleaning spray, loud with overlapping music from different corners. I picked it because it felt public and busy. I figured crowds meant safety. I figured movement meant options. He was already there when I arrived, standing near a drink stand, smiling like he had been waiting longer than he actually had. He was tall, not in an intimidating way, just enough that I noticed it when we stood close. He leaned in slightly when he talked, but not enough to be obvious. Everything about him was just subtle enough to excuse. The first part of the date was fine. Boring even. We walked around, grabbed food, commented on random stuff. He laughed easily, he smiled a lot. Maybe too much, but I told myself I was overthinking. I do that sometimes. I kept my phone in my hand, checking it now and then, grounding myself in something familiar. After a while, the noise started to get to me. The crowd felt thicker, the lights too bright. I told him I was getting tired and might head out soon. He nodded, smiling, saying nothing that pushed back. That made me relax a little. I thought I had an easy exit lined up. We stopped near a row of high tables by the wall. I set my cup down and shifted my bag on my shoulder, my body already turning toward the nearest exit. That was when he stepped sideways. Not into me, not blocking me outright, just enough to stay directly in front of the path I was taking. It was smooth, almost graceful, like he was adjusting his stance without thinking. He kept smiling, eyes on my face, waiting. I paused, confused. I adjusted my direction slightly, aiming to pass on his other side. He mirrored it instantly, still smiling, still casual. No rush, no tension on his face. My heart started beating faster. I laughed nervously and stepped back, trying again, this time more deliberately. Again, he shifted. Not fast, not slow. Just right, always enough. I stopped moving. The noise around us suddenly felt far away. My mouth went dry. I looked up at him, really looked this time. His smile had not changed, not even a little. It was steady, relaxed, like he was enjoying a private joke. I told him I really had to go. My voice sounded thin to my own ears. He nodded, still smiling, and stepped aside just a bit, creating a gap. Relief flooded my chest. I moved forward. The gap closed. He did not grab me, did not touch me at all. He just adjusted again, foot sliding, shoulder turning, body positioning itself like a living barrier. From the outside, it probably looked like nothing. Just two people shifting around each other in a crowded place. Inside, my chest tightened. I took a step back, heart racing. I tried to move around him more assertively this time, not subtle at all. He responded immediately, stepping with me, always just close enough that I could not pass without bumping into him. He kept smiling. His eyes never left mine. People brushed past behind him, unaware. A couple laughed nearby. Someone dropped a tray. Life kept going. No one noticed that my world had narrowed to the space between his shoulders and the floor. I froze, trying to think. I could shove past him, but the idea made my stomach flip. I did not want to escalate. I did not want attention. I wanted out, quietly, cleanly. I pretended to check my phone, turning slightly away, then tried to slip past when he glanced down. He did not glance down. His eyes followed every movement. He shifted again, blocking me without breaking eye contact. The smile never left. My hands started to shake. I tucked them into my jacket pocket so he would not see. My breathing felt shallow, like I could not get enough air. I started scanning the area for help. A security guard, a worker, anyone. Everyone looked busy, distracted, normal. I tried a different angle, stepping closer to the wall and aiming for a narrow gap between him and a table. He leaned back casually, hip resting against the table, closing the space. He looked relaxed, comfortable, like he could do this all night. That was when I realized he was not stopping me. He was pacing me. Every move I made, he matched. Every attempt to leave, he adjusted just enough to stay in my way. It was controlled, deliberate, and somehow polite. That made it worse. I said his name sharper this time, asking him to move. He tilted his head slightly, smile widening just a bit, like he found my tone interesting. He did not move. My heart started pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I became aware of how trapped I felt without being trapped, how there was no clear moment I could point to and say this is where it became wrong. It was just a series of small adjustments adding up to something terrifying. I tried to step past him again, closer than before, forcing the issue. He leaned in slightly, not touching me, but close enough that I could feel his presence, feel the heat of him. I stopped instinctively. My body made the decision before my brain could argue. He smiled like he had won something. I felt tears prick at my eyes and hated myself for it. I swallowed hard, forcing them back. I straightened my shoulders and stopped trying to leave. I stood still. The noise of the market rushed back in around me, overwhelming and loud. After a moment, he relaxed his stance, stepping back half step. Not enough to open a path, just enough to reset. He asked if I was okay, still smiling, like nothing strange had happened. The casualness of it made my skin crawl. I nodded because I did not know what else to do. My mind was racing, searching for an opening. I pretended to adjust my bag again, then suddenly dropped it, letting everything spill onto the floor. Keys clattered. Lip balm rolled away. My phone slid across the tile. People nearby looked over. A few paused. The moment stretched. He hesitated for the first time, glancing down at the mess. I used that second. I stepped around him fast, not careful, not polite. My shoulder brushed his arm. He turned quickly, surprise flashing across his face before the smile snapped back into place. I did not stop. I pushed through the crowd, heart hammering, breath coming in sharp bursts. I did not look back until I reached the exit doors. When I did, I saw him standing where I had left him, watching me. Smiling. He did not follow. He did not wave. He just stood there like he was memorizing the way I left. Outside, the cool air hit my face and I started shaking hard enough that my teeth chattered. I leaned against the wall, hands on my knees, trying to breathe. My phone buzzed with a notification. I jumped. I walked home instead of calling a ride, even though it was late. I needed to move, needed to feel like I was going somewhere on my own terms. Every shadow made me tense. Every footstep behind me felt too close. When I got home, I live alone, and I locked the door the second I stepped inside. Then I locked it again. I sat on the floor with my back against it, breathing slowly until my hands stopped shaking. Later that night, I read through our messages, trying to find the warning signs. They were there. Little things. Jokes about control. Comments about space. At the time, they felt harmless. Now they felt like clues I had missed. Nothing else happened. No messages. No follow-up. He disappeared like the date never existed. But sometimes when I am walking in a crowded place now, I notice how easily someone can guide your movement without touching you. How small adjustments can turn into walls. How a smile can hide something that does not want you to leave. The night started with this weird sense of anticipation I could not explain, like I was walking into something that already had an ending picked out. I remember adjusting my jacket in the reflection of a dark window and thinking I looked fine, normal, forgettable. That felt important at the time. I wanted this to be easy. I wanted this to blend into all the other first dates that turn into nothing and fade out without leaving a mark. Instead, it stuck to me in a way I still feel when I replay it. We met at a late-night bowling alley that tried to be retro, but mostly just felt tired. Neon lights buzzing, sticky floors, old screens flickering above the lanes. It was loud enough that silence never settled, which made me feel safer. Crowds, noise, movement. I told myself nothing serious could happen here. That thought came back to mock me later. She showed up early and already had shoes on, sitting at a plastic table with her phone face down. She smiled when she saw me, wide and friendly, like she was excited. I relaxed a little. We grabbed a lane, picked a ball, and started playing. The first few minutes were fine, joking about bad throws, laughing when the ball veered off course. It felt awkward in a normal way. Then the interruptions started. Every time I tried to finish a thought, she cut in. Not rudely at first, just small overlaps. I would talk about work, and she would suddenly comment on the music. I would mention something from school, and she would point out someone walking by. It was distracting, but I figured she was nervous or scatterbrained. I adjusted, talked less, waited more. When that did not change anything, she shifted tactics. She started making comments that landed wrong. Not jokes exactly. Little jabs disguised as observations. Remarks about how I stood, how I held the ball, how my last time enforced. Each one was followed by this calm look, like she was checking something off in her head. I laughed them off at first because what else do you do? I did not want to seem defensive, but inside I felt myself tightening. I became aware of every movement, every word, like I was suddenly on display. She kept doing it. During my turn, she would suddenly ask an unrelated question. When I answered, she would interrupt again with a correction or a comment about how I answered. When I missed a pin, she would sigh lightly, not annoyed, just observant, like she was watching a process unfold. People around us laughed and shouted, oblivious. From the outside, it probably looked like playful teasing. From where I was standing, it felt like being poked over and over in the same bruise. I tried to steer things back to normal. Asked her about herself. She answered briefly, then flipped it back on me. Questions that felt designed to catch me off balance. What annoyed me the most? How I reacted when people disrespected me. Whether I cared about being liked. Every answer I gave seemed to prompt another small disruption. Another awkward beat. Halfway through the game, I suggested getting food. She agreed instantly, like she had been waiting for that. We sat at a long table near the snack counter, the smell of fried food thick in the air. I thought sitting might calm things down. It did not. She knocked over my drink by accident, then watched how I reacted. She commented on it immediately, noting my expression, my tone. When I brushed it off, she nodded slowly, like that response meant something. When I reached for napkins, she interrupted to say it was fine, and then criticized how I handled inconvenience in general. My chest started to feel tight. I became hyper aware of people nearby, of how public this was, of how silly it would sound if I tried to explain why I was uncomfortable. Nothing she was doing crossed a clear line. It was all just enough to make me doubt myself. And the insults got sharper. She commented on my appearance, comparing me to someone unflattering. She questioned my confidence. She mocked a story I told earlier, repeating part of it in a flat tone, like she was testing how it sounded. Each time, she watched my face closely, eyes scanning for reactions. When I stayed calm, she escalated slightly. When I bristled, she noted it. I realized then that this was not random. This was intentional. It felt like she was creating tension on purpose, then observing how I handled it. Like she was trying to see where I bent, where I broke, how much pressure I could take before snapping or shutting down. I told myself to leave. The thought came clearly, sharp and obvious. I could just stand up and go. Nothing was stopping me. Still, I stayed. Part of me wanted to understand what was happening. Part of me wanted to prove something. Both of those parts were wrong. She interrupted me again mid-sentence, this time to point out that I was getting quieter. She said it like a fact, like she was narrating a documentary about me. My jaw tightened. I felt heat creep up my neck, she noticed. Her eyes lit up just a little. That was when she leaned back in her chair, folded her hands, and said it. Calmly. Evenly. Not loud. Not dramatic. She said she had seen enough. The words hung there, heavier than any insult she had thrown before. I stared at her, confused, my brain scrambling to catch up. She did not explain. She did not soften it. She just nodded once, like she had reached a conclusion. She stood up, grabbed her jacket, and walked away without looking back. No apology. No goodbye, just gone. I sat there frozen, heart pounding, surrounded by noise and movement that suddenly felt unreal. People laughed. Pins crashed. Someone yelled over a strike. My hands were shaking. I replayed the last hour in my head, trying to figure out what I had failed, what I had been tested on, what she had been looking for. The thought that this had been some kind of evaluation made my stomach churn. I paid for the lane and food in the haze and walked out into the parking lot, the cool air hitting me like a reset I did not fully believe in. I stood there for a long time, staring at nothing, trying to slow my breathing. On the drive home, I kept thinking about how deliberate it all felt. The timing of the interruptions, the way the comments escalated, the way she watched me instead of listening. It did not feel like chemistry gone wrong. It felt like a procedure. When I got home, I live alone and the quiet felt loud. I sat on my couch and scrolled through our old messages, looking for clues. There were hints, jokes about reading people, comments about how first dates revealed everything you needed to know. At the time, I thought it was playful. Now it felt calculated. I wondered how many other people had sat across from her and gone through the same thing. How many awkward moments she had created just to see what happened. How many conclusions she had drawn without ever explaining the criteria. A few days later, I noticed her profile was gone, unmatched, erased, like the whole thing had been temporary by design. Nothing else happened after that. No messages, no follow-up. Just a lingering feeling that I had been observed, evaluated, and dismissed without ever knowing the rules. Now, when a first date gets awkward, my chest tightens faster than it used to. Not because of the awkwardness itself, but because I wonder if it is being manufactured on purpose. If someone is watching to see how I respond instead of actually trying to know me. That night did not end with a fight or a scare. It ended with a sentence that made me realize I had never been on a date at all. I had been part of a test I did not sign up for, and I never even found out what the passing score was. The first time it happened, I thought it was just one of those weird social mix-ups that only feel creepy because you are already a little on edge. I remember brushing it off too quickly, telling myself I was tired, telling myself not to be dramatic. The second time it happened, my stomach dropped so hard I had to grip the edge of the table to keep my hands steady. By the third time, I knew something was very wrong, and I had no idea how to fix it. The date itself started normal enough, which almost made it worse later. We met at a street food lot set up in an old parking area with trucks lined up in a crooked row and picnic tables, scattered wherever they fit. String lights hung overhead, buzzing softly, casting uneven shadows on the cracked pavement. It smelled like grilled meat, sugar, and oil, loud with music from a portable speaker someone had dragged out. It felt casual, public, safe. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table near the edge of the lot, scrolling on his phone. He smiled when he saw me and stood up like he had practiced it. Nothing about him stood out in a bad way. He was easy to talk to, easy to be around. I remember thinking how relieved I was that he did not feel intense like some people do right away. We grabbed food and sat down, knees almost touching under the table because the benches were too close. We talked about dumb stuff at first. Work complaints, places we'd like to eat. Nothing personal. I felt relaxed enough to laugh without thinking about it. The night felt open, like it could go anywhere or nowhere. About 20 minutes in, a woman walked up to our table. She smiled at me, soft and familiar like she knew me. She asked if I was doing better tonight. The way she said it carried concern, like this was a follow-up to something heavy. I blinked, confused, and glanced at my date, expecting him to explain. He just smiled politely, as confused as I was. I told her she must have me mixed up with someone else. She hesitated, eyes flicking to my face, then said she was pretty sure. She mentioned something personal, something I had never said to anyone there, something I had never said at all. My chest tightened. Before I could respond, she apologized quickly and walked away, shaking her head like she had embarrassed herself. I watched her disappear into the crowd, my heart pounding. I laughed it off, awkward and unsure, and told myself it was nothing. People confuse faces all the time, especially in places like this. My date asked if I was okay. I said yes, even though my skin felt tight, like it did when something bad was about to happen. I forced myself to take another bite of food. It tasted wrong in my mouth. A few minutes passed, then it happened again. This time, it was a guy holding a drink, maybe mid-20s, stopping near our table like he had been looking for us. He looked directly at me and asked if I was feeling less overwhelmed tonight. He referenced something about me needing space last time. His tone was gentle, concerned, familiar. I felt the blood drain from my face. I shook my head, telling him he had the wrong person. He frowned, clearly confused, and said he had talked to me before. He repeated a detail about my life that made my hands go cold. Not something generic, something specific, something private. I stood up suddenly, bench scraping loud against the pavement. People nearby glanced over. The guy apologized, backing away, muttering that he must be mistaken. He left, still looking confused. I sat back down slowly, my heart racing. My date looked unsettled now, too. He asked me again if I was okay. I nodded, but my throat felt tight. I started scanning the crowd, suddenly aware of every face, every pair of eyes that lingered a second too long. I tried to reason it out. Maybe someone nearby looked like me. Maybe someone had told the story and details got mixed up. Maybe it was just a coincidence. I wanted so badly for it to be a coincidence. Then a couple approached together. They stood side by side, smiling in that careful way people do when they think they are being supportive. The woman reached out like she might touch my arm, then stopped herself. She asked if tonight was going better for me than last time. She said she hoped I had found what I was looking for. The man nodded along, adding a comment about how hard things had sounded before. My ears rang. I could barely hear the music anymore. I told them they were mistaken. I told them I had never met them. I told them they had the wrong person. The woman's smile faltered. She said she was sure. She repeated something I had supposedly said. Something about my past. Something deeply personal. Something I had never shared out loud, not even with friends. The man watched my reaction closely, like he was trying to confirm something. I felt exposed, like my skin was transparent. They apologized and walked away, whispering to each other. I could not hear what they said, but I did not need to. The damage was already done. I turned to my date, my hands shaking. He looked as freaked out as I felt. He swore he had no idea what was happening. I believed him. His confusion felt real. That almost made it worse because it meant whatever was happening was bigger than just him. I told him I needed some air. We stood up and moved toward the edge of the lot, away from the tables. My legs felt weak. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting someone else to approach. As we stood there, he asked me quietly if I had talked to anyone here before, if this place meant something to me. I shook my head. I had never been here, never even heard of it before tonight. That was when I noticed a woman across the lot, leaning against one of the trucks, watching us. She was not trying to hide it. Her eyes were fixed on me. When our eyes met, she did not look away. She smiled slightly, then turned to say something to the person next to her. My heart started pounding harder. I felt trapped in the open, like there was nowhere to move without being seen. Another person approached, then another. Each time, it was the same pattern: concern, familiarity, references to conversations that had never happened, details about my life that felt too close, too accurate, like they had been pieced together from somewhere else. I started to feel dizzy. My breathing went shallow. I could not keep track of how many times it happened. 5, 6, more. Each one chipped away at my sense of reality. My date suggested leaving. I agreed instantly. We started walking toward the exit of the lot, but even then, someone called out to me, asking if I was sure I was okay, saying they hoped I had support now. I did not stop. I did not look back. Once we were out on the sidewalk, away from the noise and lights, I leaned against a wall and tried to breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down. My date hovered nearby, clearly unsure what to do. I pulled out my phone, needing something solid, something real. I checked my messages. Nothing strange. No posts. No tags. No signs that anyone had been talking about me publicly. Everything looked normal, which felt impossible. I asked him if he had told anyone anything about me. He swore he had not. He had barely even messaged anyone that night. I believed him. Again, that belief did not comfort me. We decided to end the date. There was no fixing whatever this was. He offered to walk me part of the way home. I said no, I needed space. I needed to be alone. As I walked away, I felt eyes on my back, not just his. Others, like the law had memorized me. When I got home, I lived alone and the quiet felt heavy. I locked the door and slid down against it, trying to slow my breathing. My phone buzzed. A notification from a social app I barely used. Someone had viewed my profile. Then another. Then another. I checked the profiles. Blank. Minimal. No photos. No posts. Just usernames that meant nothing. My heart raced. I blocked them one by one. Over the next few days, it did not stop. People I did not know messaged me, asking how I was doing now, referencing things I had never said, moments I had never lived. Some sounded concerned. Some sounded curious. None of them explained how they knew anything about me. I went back through my history, old posts, comments, photos. I read everything, searching for clues. There was nothing obvious. Nothing that explained how strangers could repeat pieces of my life back to me like they had been there. I stopped going out for a while after that. Stopped meeting new people. Every time someone looked at me a little too long, my chest tightened. Every time someone asked how I was doing, I wondered what they thought they already knew. The date itself faded quickly in my memory. His face, the food, the conversation. None of that mattered anymore. What stayed was a feeling of being known by people I had never met, of having a version of me floating around that I could not see or control. I still do not know where those people got their information. I do not know who told them what or why. I only know that night cracked something open in me that never fully closed again. Sometimes I wonder if they were all confusing me with someone else. Sometimes I wonder if I was the someone else, and I just did not know it yet. I thought I knew what it felt like to be uncomfortable on a first date, but I learned that night there are layers to it, and the worst layer is quiet. Not shouting, not drama, not anything you can point to and explain easily. Just a slow tightening feeling, like you are watching your own life get smaller in real time. The kind of feeling that does not hit all at once, but settles in and refuses to leave. We met at a small brewery that used to be a warehouse, all concrete floors and long tables made from old wood. The lights were low and warm, and the place smelled like yeast and cleaner. It was busy enough to feel safe, but not loud enough to disappear into. I picked it because it felt neutral, public, normal. I wanted normal. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at one of the long tables with her phone next to her drink. She smiled when she saw me, friendly and calm. Nothing about her seemed off at first. She looked like someone who knew how to be at ease in public spaces. I liked that. It made me relax. The first part of the night was easy. We talked about work, about dumb things we liked to watch, about how the city kept changing. She listened closely, nodding, asking follow-up questions. I remember thinking how refreshing it felt to not have to carry the whole conversation. I felt seen in a good way, at least at first. What I did not notice right away was how often she glanced at her phone. Not checking messages, not scrolling, just tapping the screen awake, then locking it again, like she was making sure something was still there. After a while, the conversation drifted into more personal territory. Nothing extreme, just boundaries, what we were looking for, what we were not. I have learned to be clear about that early. It saves time. It saves confusion. I told her I liked taking things slow. I told her I did not like pressure. I told her I needed space to decide how I felt about someone. She listened without interrupting. She nodded. She smiled. She said nothing to challenge it. The air felt calm, steady. Then things shifted. She leaned a little closer, asking questions that pushed right up against what I had just said. Not crossing it outright, just testing the edge. I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, the one that tells me to speak up before resentment builds. So I did. I restated my boundary calmly, clearly, without blaming her. I said I was not comfortable going further than that tonight. She did not argue. She did not get defensive. She did not even look upset. She picked up her phone. The way she did it was careful, deliberate. She unlocked it, tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward me. She did not shove it in my face. She just angled it so I could see. It was a drafted post. My name was not in it, but everything else was. A vague description of a man who set boundaries in a way that could easily be twisted. Language that hinted at harm without stating anything directly. Words chosen carefully to imply a story without committing to details. At the bottom, tagged clearly, was my workplace. I felt the blood drain from my face. My ears started ringing. I looked up at her, expecting anger or smugness or something sharp. She was calm, almost gentle. She did not threaten me. She did not say what she would do. She just watched my reaction closely, like she was studying something fragile. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My job flashed through my mind. My boss, my coworkers, the building I walked into every morning, the way reputations worked now, how fast things spread, how little proof mattered once a story took off. I told her this was not okay. My voice sounded strange to me, tight and quiet. She did not react. She just tilted her head slightly, eyes flicking between my face and the phone screen like she was checking alignment. I asked her to delete it. She did not say yes or no. She locked her phone and set it back on the table, screen down, exactly where it had been before. The casualness of it made my stomach drop. She took a sip of her drink like nothing had happened. I sat there frozen, my mind racing. I replayed the conversation in my head, searching for anything I had said that could be twisted into what I saw on that screen. I realized how little it would take, how a few words out of context could ruin something I had spent years building. I felt trapped in a way I had never felt before. Not physically, socially, digitally, like there was a knife resting on the table between us, and only she could decide whether to pick it up. I told her again that I wanted to leave. My hands were shaking now, and I did not bother hiding it. She nodded slowly, like she had expected that response. She picked up her phone again, thumb hovering over the screen, then looked back at me. She said she just wanted to be understood. Not a lot in those exact words, but the meaning was clear in the way she looked at me, in the way she waited, like my compliance would make everything disappear. I realized then that the boundary I had set had become leverage. I stood up abruptly, chair scraping loud against the floor. People nearby glanced over, then went back to their conversations. From the outside, it probably looked like a normal date ending awkwardly. Inside, my chest felt like it was collapsing. I told her I was leaving. I did not argue. I did not negotiate. I grabbed my jacket and stepped away from the table. She did not follow. She did not call after me. She stayed seated, watching, phone in her hand. As I walked toward the door, my phone buzzed in my pocket. My heart nearly stopped. I pulled it out, expecting the worst. It was just a notification from a group chat. Nothing else. I kept walking. Outside, the night air felt cold and sharp. I leaned against the brick wall of the building, breathing hard, trying to steady myself. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clench them into fists. I checked my phone obsessively, my work email, my social accounts. Nothing had happened. No tags, no posts, no messages. Everything looked normal, which somehow made it worse. The threat still existed, hovering in possibility. I walked home instead of calling a ride. I needed time to think. Every step felt heavy. Every notification sound from passing cars made my heart jump. When I got home, I live alone, and the quiet felt dangerous. I locked the door and sat on the couch with my phone in my hands, staring at the screen. I refreshed my feeds again and again. Nothing changed. Hours passed, then the night, then morning. Nothing ever appeared. No post, no tag, no fallout. It was like the draft never existed. I unmatched her later that day, hands still shaking. Her profile was already gone, erased, like the date had been temporary by design. I still think about that screen sometimes, about how calmly she showed it to me, about how easy it would have been for her to hit post, about how setting a boundary had turned into a test of how much I was willing to risk to keep my life intact. Now, when I talk about boundaries, I feel my chest tighten in a way it never used to. Not because I do not believe in them, but because I know how quickly they can be used against you by the wrong person with the right tools. That date did not end with a fight or a threat or a message sent into the world. It ended with me walking away, knowing that for a few quiet minutes, my entire future had rested on someone else's thumb. I knew it was bad when the door closed behind me and I did not feel relief. That first step outside is supposed to feel like air rushing back into your lungs, like the night resetting everything. Instead, my stomach stayed tight, like my body knew the date was not actually over yet. I remember the sound of the door latch clicking and thinking that sound should have meant freedom. It did not. We met at a small neighborhood pizza place wedged between a laundry spot and a closed nail salon. Fluorescent lights, plastic booths, floors that always felt a little sticky. It was loud in a dull way, kids yelling, phones buzzing, ovens humming. I picked it because it felt low stakes and casual. The kind of place where you eat and leave without ceremony. I did not want anything complicated. The beginning was fine. Not amazing, not terrible. He talked a lot, mostly about himself, but I had been on enough dates to know that happens. I nodded, smiled, added comments when I could. I kept my bag looped around my ankle under the table, phone inside, keys easy to reach. I always do that, even when things feel okay. About halfway through, something shifted. Not one big thing, just a build-up. He started leaning closer, started asking questions that felt less curious and more demanding. When I gave short answers, he pushed. When I laughed it off, he pressed harder. My chest started doing that familiar tight thing, the one that tells me I am about to regret not leaving sooner. I told him I was going to head out. I said it calmly, clearly without excuses. He frowned and smiled, then frowned again like he was recalculating. He said we had just gotten comfortable. He said it felt abrupt. He said he thought things were going well. I stood up anyway. That was when the negotiating started. He talked fast, listing reasons I should stay a little longer. How the night was still young. How he had been looking forward to this. How it was rude to leave early. None of it was aggressive. It was worse than that. It was reasonable sounding. Polished, like he had practiced it. I picked up my bag and stepped toward the door. He stood up too, moving just enough to keep pace with me. Not blocking yet, just close. I reached the door, pushed it open, and stepped outside. Cold air hit my face, sharp and real. For half a second, I thought that would be it. He followed me out. The door swung shut behind him, then suddenly the noise of the place was gone, replaced by street sounds, cars passing, a distant siren. The sidewalk felt narrow even though it was not. I started walking toward the corner without saying anything, my heart beating faster with every step. He walked beside me. He started guilt-tripping almost immediately, how he had cleared his schedule, how he did not usually put himself out there, how it hurt to be dismissed so quickly. His tone stayed calm, almost sad, like he was the one being wronged. I kept walking, eyes forward, not engaging. He stepped slightly ahead of me, then slowed, forcing me to adjust or bump into him. I stopped short, annoyed and alert. He turned to face me, still smiling, hands open like he was trying to keep things peaceful. He said he just wanted to talk. He said we should not end things like this. He said I owed him a few more minutes. The word owed hit me wrong. My stomach flipped. I stepped to the side to go around him. He mirrored me instantly, blocking the path without touching me. It felt like that moment in a hallway when someone accidentally steps the same direction as you, except this kept happening. Every time I tried to pass, he adjusted just enough to stay in front. People walked by on the other side of the street. A couple laughed as they passed us. No one paid attention. From the outside, it probably looked like a normal disagreement. Two people talking things out. Nothing urgent. My heart started racing. I told him I needed to leave now. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He nodded like he understood, then kept talking. He reframed everything. How he was only trying to communicate. How I was misreading him. How walking away like this was unfair. I tried to step around him again, sharper this time. He shifted again, quicker. Still smiling. Still calm. My chest tightened. I became very aware of how close he was, of how little space there felt like there was between us, even though we were outdoors. I told him to move. He did not raise his voice. He did not argue directly. He just said we should slow down. He said I seemed upset. He said maybe we should take a breath together. The way he said together made my skin crawl. I scanned the street looking for someone, anyone. A store still open, a group of people. The nearest place was a closed gas station with dark windows. I felt suddenly very far from help. I stepped backward, creating space, and he stepped forward, maintaining the distance. Always the same. Always measured. My hands started shaking. I tucked them into my jacket pocket so he would not see. He started negotiating again. If I stayed 5 more minutes, he would let me go. If I just explained what went wrong, he would understand. If I gave him another chance, he promised it would be different. The words tumbled out of him smoothly like options on a menu. I realized then that he was not trying to convince me. He was trying to wear me down. I turned sharply and started walking faster toward the corner. He followed immediately, his steps matching mine. When I reached the crosswalk, I stopped short, checking for cars. He stepped in front of me again, blocking my view of the street. That was the moment panic really hit. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might throw up. My breathing went shallow. I could feel heat rising in my face. I told him to get out of my way. My voice cracked this time. He noticed. His smile softened like he found my fear reassuring. He said he just did not want me to leave upset. He said it would haunt him. He said I would regret ending things like this. The guilt layering on guilt made my head spin. A car honked somewhere behind us. I jumped. He did not. I did something then that surprised even me. I dropped my bag. Everything spilled onto the sidewalk. Keys clattered. Lip balm rolled. My phone slid toward the curb. The noise drew attention. A guy across the street glanced over. A woman slowed her pace. He looked down instinctively, just for a second. I used that second. I darted around him, grabbing my phone off the ground and sprinting across the street as the light changed. A car honked again louder. I did not look back until I reached the other side and ducked into a small convenience store that was still open. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed. A bored cashier looked up, then back down. I leaned against a shelf, breathing hard, my legs shaking so badly I had to crouch. I watched the door. He did not follow me inside. After a minute, I peeked through the glass. He was standing on the sidewalk, looking around, scanning. When his eyes landed on the store, our eyes met through the window. My stomach dropped. He smiled and lifted a hand slightly, like he was deciding whether to come in. I stayed where I was. After a few seconds, he turned and walked away down the block, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed, like nothing had happened. I stayed in that store for a long time. Bought a bottle of water I did not need just to justify being there. My hands would not stop shaking. My phone buzzed with a message from him asking if I was okay. I blocked him without responding. When I finally walked home, I took a longer route, sticking to well-lit streets. Every footstep behind me made my chest tighten. I kept checking reflections in windows. When I got home, I lived alone and the quiet hit me hard. I locked the door and checked it again. I sat on the floor with my back against it until my breathing slowed. Nothing else happened after that. No messages from new numbers. No surprise appearances. He vanished as quickly as he had appeared. But what stayed with me was how polite it all had been, how calm, how controlled. How he never raised his voice or touched me, yet still managed to make leaving feel impossible for longer than it should have. Now, when I end a date, I do it inside, near people, near exits, and the second I step outside, I move fast, because I learned that sometimes the scariest part is not when someone gets angry. It is when they keep smiling while they refuse to let you go. The night felt wrong before it ever felt scary, and that is what still messes with me. There was no sudden jolt, no clear moment where I could say that was it. It was more like being slowly lowered into water that is colder than you expect, realizing too late that your body has already adjusted to something it should not have. I remember standing outside the place before going in, phone in my hand, thinking I should turn around just because. I did not. I told myself I was being weird. I told myself to stop overthinking. That choice followed me the whole way home. We met at a late-night mini-golf spot that had reopened after being abandoned for years. Fake palm trees, glowing balls, cracked concrete painted over with bright colors. It was loud with laughing groups and kids running around, even though it was late. I picked it because it felt unserious, like nothing important could happen there. It felt like a place where mistakes would not matter. She showed up wearing a relaxed smile and acting like she was already comfortable around me. Not overly friendly, not distant. Just easy. We joked about the place, about how ridiculous it was to meet there. The first few holes were actually fun. We laughed when the ball bounced off something unexpected. It felt like the kind of night that would end with a shrug and maybe a second date or maybe not. Then the small things started piling up. Nothing obvious, just moments that felt off. She would interrupt me mid-sentence, then apologize quickly and keep talking anyway. She would make comments that landed a little sharp, then smile like she was joking. She would disappear to take a call, then come back and act like nothing happened. I noticed myself adjusting, talking less, choosing words carefully, laughing even when I did not want to. She kept pushing things slightly off balance. Not enough that I can point to one thing and say that was wrong. Just enough that I felt like I was constantly catching up, like I was reacting instead of participating. At one point, she teased me about how seriously I was taking the game. Not in a mean way, just enough to make me second-guess myself. Later, she commented on how quiet I had gotten. She asked if I was always like that under pressure. The word pressure stuck in my head, but I ignored it. We took a break halfway through and sat at a picnic table near the edge of the course. People passed by constantly, groups laughing, kids shouting. It felt public and normal, which made me dismiss the tension building in my chest. I told myself this was just awkward first date stuff. She started asking questions that felt heavier than before. Not deep emotional questions, more like situational ones. How I handled stress, what I did when people pushed my buttons, whether I preferred to confront things or let them slide. I answered honestly because that felt like the right thing to do. Each answer seemed to prompt another small test, another slight shift. She knocked my drink over by accident and watched me closely as I cleaned it up. She laughed when I brushed it off, then noted how calm I was. The way she said noted made my stomach tighten. I told myself I was reading into it too much. As the night went on, I felt tired in a way that was not physical, like my brain had been working overtime without me noticing. I told her I might head out soon. She nodded easily, like she had expected that, like it was part of the plan. We finished the last hole in silence. Not awkward silence, intentional silence. She watched me line up the final shot without saying anything. When I missed, she smiled slightly, like she had just seen something confirmed. We walked toward the exit, the noise of the place fading behind us. My shoulders relaxed a little. I thought we were done. I thought the night would finally release me. That was when she stopped walking. She turned to face me, expression calm, almost kind, and said she wanted to explain something. Not apologetically, not nervously, like she was about to give context after a presentation. She told me the date had been structured on purpose. The words hit me slower than they should have. Structured, on purpose. She explained that she had designed the night to introduce small stressors, interruptions, mild embarrassment, uncertainty. She said she wanted to see how much pressure I could handle before reacting. She said it mattered to her to know how people responded when they felt slightly off balance. She talked like she was explaining a game. My heart started pounding. I felt heat rise in my face, but my body stayed weirdly still. I asked why. She said it helped her understand compatibility. She said people showed who they really were under pressure. She said she needed to know if I could tolerate discomfort without lashing out or shutting down. Tolerate was the word that stuck. I told her I did not agree to that. My voice sounded calm, but my chest felt tight. She nodded, acknowledging it like a footnote. She said consent was complicated in social settings. She said most people participated without realizing it. She said that was kind of the point. My stomach dropped. The lights around the course suddenly felt too bright. The laughter from nearby groups felt far away, like it was happening in a different place entirely. She went on to explain specific moments from the night, when she interrupted me, when she teased me, when she spilled the drink. She explained what she was looking for each time. She described my reactions back to me like data points. Calm, accommodating, compliant. Compliant. She smiled when she said that one. I felt this cold wave wash over me. Not fear exactly. More like realization. The night replayed in my head all at once, and suddenly every weird moment lined up. It had not been random. It had been deliberate. I told her I was not okay with that. My voice shook a little this time. She tilted her head, studying my reaction again, like she was still collecting information. She said my response now was interesting too. She said this part mattered just as much. I stepped back without thinking. She did not follow. She stayed where she was, hands relaxed at her sides, posture open. Not threatening, not defensive, just observant. I asked if she did this to everyone. She said not everyone passed the initial filters. She said she had refined the process over time. Refined, like this was a system. My hands started shaking. I tucked them into my jacket pockets. I felt exposed in a way I could not fully explain, like my reactions throughout the night had been stripped of meaning and turned into metrics. I told her I was leaving. She nodded again, like she had expected the outcome too. She said I had done better than most. That comment made my stomach churn. I walked away without waiting for a response, my legs moving faster than my brain. I could feel her eyes on my back, not angry, not upset. Satisfied, like she had gotten what she needed. I did not stop walking until I reached the parking lot. The air felt colder there, realer. I leaned against my car and tried to breathe, my chest tight, my thoughts racing. My phone buzzed with a notification from her, but I did not open it. I blocked her instead, my fingers moving on instinct. The drive home felt endless. Every red light gave my thoughts more time to spiral. I replayed the night again and again, wondering how much of myself I had given away without knowing, wondering how many reactions I had thought were mine but were actually responses to manipulation. When I got home, I lived alone, and the quiet felt heavy. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, feeling drained in a way I had never felt after a date. Not sad, not angry, just use. Over the next few days, small things kept hitting me. How often I adjust to make others comfortable. How quickly I excuse behavior that feels off. How easily someone could test my limits without me realizing it. Those thoughts stuck with me more than her face or her words. Nothing else happened after that. No follow-ups. No messages from new numbers. She vanished like the date had served its purpose and been archived. But sometimes when I feel that familiar pressure to smooth things over or stay quiet to keep things easy, I think about that night. About how calmly she explained it all. About how the whole thing had been designed to see how much I could take before pushing back. And I wonder how many other people are out there running tests without telling you that you are part of one. The exact second the night broke in half was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, almost polite. I was already halfway out of my chair, bag on my shoulder, brain switching into leaving mode when he mentioned my car like it was nothing. The words slid into the air so casually that for a beat I thought I had imagined them. Then my stomach dropped, heavy and sudden, and I knew this was not something you mishear. We met at a late-night sandwich place that tried to look cozy, but mostly just felt tired. Chipped tables, warm lights, the smell of bread and grease clinging to everything. It was one of those spots people went to after work when they did not want to cook or talk much. I liked it because it felt ordinary. Ordinary meant safe. Ordinary meant forgettable. He was already there when I walked in, sitting near the window with his phone on the table. He looked up right away and smiled, easy and practiced. Nothing about him stood out. Average clothes, average posture, average energy. I remember thinking that was a good sign. The date started fine. Not great, not bad, just steady. We talked about work, about dumb shows, about how the city never slept even when it felt like it should. He listened, nodded, laughed at the right times. I noticed he watched people through the window sometimes, but I brushed it off. Lots of people watch the street when there is nothing else to look at. I kept my keys in my pocket, fingers brushing against them now and then out of habit. My car was parked a block and a half away under a flickering street light near a closed pharmacy. I remembered that detail clearly because I had debated moving it to a better spot and decided I was being dramatic. As the night went on, I felt that familiar low-level tiredness settle in. Not boredom. Just that feeling that tells you it is time to go. I told him I was going to head out. He nodded, No resistance, no guilt trip. That alone made me relax a little. I stood up, slung my bag over my shoulder, and reached for my jacket. That was when he said it. He mentioned my car's make first, like it was part of the conversation. Then the color. Then, almost as an afterthought, the exact spot it was parked. The side of the street, the direction it was facing, the broken light nearby. My body froze. For a second, my brain tried to protect me by offering explanations. Maybe he saw me park. Maybe he guessed. Maybe it was coincidence. But the details were too clean, too precise. No hesitation. No checking my reaction before continuing. I felt heat rush to my face and then drain away, leaving me cold. I asked how he knew that, trying to keep my voice normal. He shrugged like it was obvious, said he noticed things, said he liked being aware of his surroundings. He smiled like he had just shared a fun fact. Nothing about it felt fun. I laughed weakly because that is what my body does when it is scared and does not want to show it. I told him that was weird. He shrugged again, still smiling, like I was the one overreacting. I said goodbye and turned toward the door. My legs felt stiff, like they were not fully listening to me. I half expected him to follow. He did not, at least not right away. Outside, the night air felt sharp and real. I took a few deep breaths, trying to calm my racing heart. I told myself I was fine. He was probably just observant. Lots of people notice cars. I started walking down the street anyway, my footsteps sounding too loud in my ears. After about half a block, I heard footsteps behind me. I did not turn around immediately. I sped up slightly. The footsteps sped up too. My heart started pounding harder. I told myself it could be anyone. This was a busy street. Then I heard his voice behind me, calling my name casually, like he had just remembered something he forgot to say. I stopped because running felt worse, because I did not want to look scared. I turned around slowly. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed, still smiling. He said he just wanted to make sure I got to my car okay. The way he said it made my stomach twist. He said it like a courtesy, like a favor. I told him I was fine. I said I did not need company. My voice shook just a little. He noticed. His smile softened like he found it reassuring. He started walking again, not toward me, but alongside me, keeping pace. He talked about the night like nothing had changed, commented on the weather, on how quiet it was getting. Every now and then he glanced down the street in the direction of my car. I changed directions suddenly, crossing the street toward a busier block. He crossed too without missing a beat, still smiling, still calm. I told him again that I wanted to walk alone. He nodded, said he understood, then kept walking. His presence felt heavier with every step, like a shadow that refused to detach. I thought about pulling out my phone, but my hands were shaking and I did not want him to see. I scanned the street for people. There were a few, but spaced out, moving quickly, wrapped up in their own worlds. When we got close to the block where my car was parked, my chest tightened. The flickering streetlight came into view. The outline of my car sat exactly where he had said it would be. He slowed slightly, then gestured toward it with his chin, like he was pointing out a landmark. He said something about it being a decent spot, all things considered. The casualness of it made my skin crawl. I stopped walking and turned to face him fully. I told him to stop following me. My voice was firmer now, fear sharpening it. His smile faltered for the first time, just a little. He said he was not following me. He said he was just heading the same way. He said I was reading too much into it. The words sounded rehearsed. I took a step back toward the brighter part of the street. He stepped forward just enough to keep the distance the same. Not touching, not blocking, just present. My heart was racing so hard it felt like it might break something. I could feel sweat on my palms. I thought about my car keys in my pocket and how little protection they actually offered. A car drove past slowly, headlights washing over us. I lifted my hand slightly, hoping the driver might notice something off. They did not. The car kept going. I made a decision then, not a perfect one, just the first one that came to me. I pulled my phone out and pretended to answer a call. I started talking loudly, saying I was almost there, saying I could see the place. I said a name. I said it with confidence I did not feel. He watched me closely, eyes narrowing just a bit. His smile tightened. He took a step back, finally creating space. He said he would head off then. He said it was nice meeting me. He said to drive safe. The words sounded normal, polite, harmless. He turned and walked away, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed, disappearing down the block like nothing had happened. I stood there shaking, phone still pressed to my ear, pretending to talk until I could not hear his footsteps anymore. Then I moved fast, not running, but close. I unlocked my car with trembling hands and got inside, locking the doors immediately. I sat there for a long time, heart pounding, breathing shallow, watching the street through the windshield. Every passing figure made my chest tighten. Every shadow felt like it might be him coming back. Eventually, I drove home using the longest route possible, sticking to busy streets even though it took twice as long. When I got home, I live alone and the quiet felt wrong. I locked the door, then checked it again. I stood in my kitchen staring at nothing, trying to steady myself. My phone buzzed with a message from him saying he hoped I got home safe. I blocked him without replying. Nothing else happened after that. No surprise messages. No cars parked outside. No footsteps on my street. But now, every time someone mentions my car casually, even a friend, my stomach drops. Every time I park somewhere new, I double-check the surroundings. I remember how easily he said it, how calm he was, how much he knew without ever being told. The date itself faded quickly, his face, the conversation, the food. None of that stuck. What stayed was the moment I realized someone had been paying attention in a way I never agreed to, and how small that made the world feel all at once. The worst part was how normal the morning started. No dread, no leftover nerves from the date, just sunlight through the blinds and my phone buzzing on the nightstand like it always did. I remember thinking I might be late for work and rolling over to silence the alarm. That was when I saw the missed call notification and the voicemail icon sitting there, heavy and quiet, like it had weight. I did not know yet that my name had already left my control. The date the night before had been forgettable in the most boring way. We met at a small museum that stayed open late once a week, the kind with quiet halls and benches that smell faintly like dust and polish. It felt safe and slow. We walked through exhibits, made casual comments, laughed softly so we would not disturb anyone. She took photos of everything, which I did not think much of at the time. Lots of people document everything now. She asked for a couple pictures of us together too, smiling in front of displays. I hesitated for a second, then agreed. Nothing about it felt risky. It was just proof we had met, just a memory. The date ended early. No tension. No arguments. No red flags I could clearly point to. We hugged goodbye outside under the museum lights, exchanged a quick message saying we got home safe, and that was it. I went to bed thinking it had been fine. Not great. Not terrible. Just another night that would fade. The voicemail did not fade. I listened to it sitting up in bed, the room suddenly too quiet. It was from a number I did not recognize. Calm voice, official tone, asking me to call back regarding a report connected to my name. My stomach dropped hard enough that I had to put my feet on the floor to steady myself. I called back immediately, my hands shaking. I paced my room while it rang, trying to think of what this could possibly be about. Unpaid ticket. Wrong number. Mistake. My brain scrambled for explanations that did not make my chest tighten. They told me there had been a report submitted. They told me my name had come up. They asked me to come in and answer some questions. I asked what it was about. They said they could not discuss details over the phone. The calmness of that answer made my heart start pounding. I went to work anyway because I did not know what else to do. I sat at my desk staring at my screen, rereading the same email over and over without absorbing anything. Every sound made me jump. Every notification felt like a threat. By mid-morning, I could not focus anymore. I told my manager I needed to step out. I did not explain. I drove to the station with my stomach in knots, replaying the date in my head, searching for something I missed. Something that could have gone wrong. There was nothing. Just walking. Talking. Photos. That was when it clicked. The photos. They brought me into a small room with plain walls and a table that felt too big for the space. They asked me to explain my relationship with her. How we met. What we did. Where we went. I told the truth. every boring detail. I talked about the museum, the exhibits, the photos. Then they showed me the pictures. My breath caught in my throat. There we were, smiling, standing close, arm around arm, timestamps clear, location data intact, everything clean and normal. Nothing in the images themselves looked bad. That almost made it worse. They'd explained she had submitted them as proof of an incident, something she claimed happened after the date, something she said I did, something I absolutely did not do. The words blurred together after that. Accusation, report, evidence, investigation. I felt like I was watching someone else's life get taken apart. I told him it was not true, my voice summoned far away to my own ears. I explained that the date ended early, that we parted in public, that there were messages afterward confirming we went our separate ways. They listened, took notes, nodded. They asked if I had any proof that nothing happened. That question lodged itself in my chest like a splinter. How do you prove an absence? How do you show something did not happen? I showed them my phone, messages, timestamps, ride receipts, location history, anything I could think of. My hands shook as I scrolled, terrified I might miss something important. They said they would look into it. They said I was not under arrest. They said I was free to go. Free did not feel like the right word. I left the station feeling hollow. The sun was too bright, the street too loud. People walked by laughing, living their lives, unaware that mine had tilted off its axis. The rest of the day blurred together. I could not eat. I could not sit still. My phone buzzed constantly with nothing important, each vibration sending a spike of fear through me. That night, I did not sleep. I kept seeing the photos in my head. How harmless they looked. How easily they could be repurposed. How they now meant something I never agreed to. Over the next few days, the questions continued. More calls. More clarifications. I replayed the date over and over, checking my memory against the timeline. I wondered if I had said something wrong. If something had been misunderstood. If there was any way this was an honest mistake. But then I saw the report summary. It was detailed, structured, confident. It described events that had never happened, anchored to the photos as proof that we had been together. It painted a picture that made sense on paper if you ignored reality. Reading it felt like reading fan fiction about my own life, except the stakes were real. I realized then how easy it was to tell a story when you already had the images. The investigation dragged on longer than I expected. Weeks, my name floating in systems I did not control. My reputation suspended in uncertainty. I told close friends what was happening, watching their faces shift from disbelief to concern. I told my family, my voice shaking despite myself. Some people pulled back without saying why. Others asked careful questions. I felt like I was constantly explaining myself, constantly justifying my own existence. Eventually, the truth came out. Location data, timelines, inconsistencies in her story. The case did not move forward. They told me there was not enough to support her claim. They told me it was closed. Closed did not mean erased. The record of the report still existed. The memory of sitting in that room still existed. The feeling of seeing my own face used against me still existed. I never heard from her again. No apology. No explanation. Her profile disappeared. Messages deleted, like the whole thing had served its purpose and been discarded. I stopped letting people take pictures of me for a while after that, especially on dates, especially early on. Every time someone lifted a phone, my chest tightened. Every smile felt rehearsed. I still think about how ordinary it all was. How easily a normal night turned into something that followed me for months. How something meant to capture a memory became a weapon I never saw coming. The scariest part was not the police call. It was realizing how little control you have over your own story once someone else decides to tell it for you. The moment stuck in my head is not the walk home or the way my hand shook later. It is the calmness of his voice right at the end, like he was reading the grocery list. I was already standing, bag on my shoulder, body angled toward the door when he said it. Not loud, not mean, just factual. like the night had been a process and I had reached the final screen. We met at a late-night bookstore cafe that stayed open for people who did not want to be alone yet. The lights were soft, the shelves tall and uneven, the smell of paper and coffee everywhere. It felt like a place where nothing bad could happen. People whispered. Keys tapped on laptops. Someone laughed quietly in the corner. It felt safe in a gentle, boring way. He was sitting at a small round table near the back when I arrived, already set up with a drink and a notebook. He closed it when he saw me and smiled. It was an easy smile, practiced but not creepy. I remember thinking he looked like someone who knew what he was doing. That thought made me feel relaxed instead of nervous. The date started normal. Actually, better than normal. We talked about books, about shows, about how weird dating apps had gotten. He listened closely. Maybe too closely, but I told myself that was a good thing. He remembered small details from our messages. He nodded at the right times. He laughed quietly so he would not disturb anyone else. What I did not notice at first was how often he redirected the conversation. Not obviously, just small nudges. If I talked about something emotional, he shifted it to how I handled it. If I joked, he asked why I chose that kind of humor. If I paused, he waited instead of filling the silence. It made me talk more, explain more, justify things I normally would not. He asked questions that felt thoughtful on the surface. How I dealt with stress, how I made decisions, what I did when things did not go my way. I answered honestly because it felt like that was the point of a first date. I wanted to be real. I wanted to be understood. Every now and then he glanced at his phone, not to scroll, just to check something and put it back down. The screen was always angled away from me. I did not think much of it at the time. About an hour in, I started to feel tired in that specific way that comes from being analyzed without realizing it. Not bored, not overwhelmed, just drained, like my brain had been doing extra work in the background. I told him I was probably going to head out soon. He nodded, no resistance, no disappointment. That should have felt reassuring. Instead, it made my stomach tighten just a little. I stood up, slid my chair back quietly, and thanked him for the night. I was halfway through stepping away from the table when he spoke again. He said I did not qualify. The words did not land right away. My brain stalled, like it had tripped over something unexpected. I turned back, confused, expecting him to explain or laugh or clarify. He stayed seated, calm, hands folded on the table. He said it like a conclusion, not an insult, like a result. He told me the date had been part of a screening process, not just for him, but for the platform we had met on. He said some people were better suited than others. He said compatibility was about more than chemistry. It was about thresholds. I felt heat rise in my face, then drain away. I asked what he meant. He said he had been assessing how I responded to certain prompts, how I handled ambiguity, how I reacted to subtle pressure. The way he talked made it sound clinical, distant. Then he added the part that really made my stomach drop. He said my profile had already been flagged. Not reported, not banned. Flagged, like an item in a system. I asked what that meant. He said it was internal. He said it would not show on my end. He said it was just a note, a marker, something that helped improve matches. The way he said improve made my chest tighten. I asked who had access to it. He shrugged slightly and said it depended. Moderators, safety teams, sometimes other users. He said it casually, like it was no big deal. I felt suddenly exposed, like my phone in my pocket was no longer mine, like my profile had been altered without my consent. He told me not to worry. He said lots of people got flagged. He said it did not mean anything bad. It just meant I was not what they were looking for. The word they echoed in my head. I noticed then that his notebook was back open. Not wide, just enough that I could see lines of writing. Not my name, just shorthand. Check marks, symbols I did not recognize. I asked if this was allowed. He smiled gently and said participation was implied when you agreed to meet. He said terms covered more than people realized. He said most users never read them closely. I felt this wave of anger rise, sharp and sudden. I told him this was messed up. My voice shook despite my effort to keep it steady. He nodded like he expected that response, like it was another data point. He said my reaction now was consistent with his earlier assessment. That was it for me. I turned and walked toward the door, my legs feeling unsteady but moving anyway. I could feel his eyes on my back, not angry and not mocking, thoughtful, like he was finishing a checklist. Outside, the cool air hit me hard. I stood on the sidewalk breathing fast, my heart racing. The street was quiet, just a few cars passing, their headlights sweeping over me and moving on. I felt small, watched, catalogued. I pulled my phone out immediately and opened the app. My profile looked the same. Photos, bio, matches. Nothing seemed different. That almost made it worse. The idea that something could be wrong without any visible sign. I walked home instead of calling a ride. I needed to move. Every step felt heavy. My thoughts spiraled. Flagged for what? Flagged by who? Flagged where? When I got home, I live alone, and the silence felt loud. I sat on my bed and opened the app again, then closed it, then opened it again. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Over the next few days, things started feeling off in small ways. Fewer matches. Conversations dying faster than usual. People unmatching without explanation. It could have been coincidence. Dating apps are like that. But the timing sat wrong in my chest. I sent a support request asking about flags. The response was vague. Automated, saying the platform used internal systems to improve user safety and matching quality. No specifics, no reassurance. I thought about deleting my profile, starting over. Then I wondered if the flag would follow me, if my number or email was tied to it, if that was the point. I kept thinking about how calm he was, how sure, how he had said it like a fact of life instead of something he had chosen to do. I wondered how many other people had sat across from him and heard the same thing, how many had walked away questioning themselves instead of the system. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No bans. No messages saying I had violated anything. Just a slow, quiet sense that something had shifted without my permission. I eventually deleted the app, not because I was scared, but because every time I opened it, I felt that same tightening in my chest, like I was being judged by rules I could not see. That day did not end with yelling or threats. It ended with a sentence that made me realize how little control you have over your digital version once someone decides to mark it. I still meet people, just not there. And every time someone talks about algorithms and safety and optimization, I think about that quiet table in the bookstore cafe and the way he said I did not qualify, like the decision had already been made long before I stood up to leave.